Chapter 390. Since it was so dark, they would need a light source if they wanted to enter the tunnel. Therefore, the person at the front took out his light source. However, they did not expect that when the light shone, a large group of monsters would fly towards them. Fengwu reacted quickly and pulled Shozo to the side. Their position was not bad, as they had not entered the tunnel yet. What's that? Damn it, it's fish one moment, and then it's a bunch of monsters the next. Is there an end to this? Stop screaming. If I'm not mistaken, they're probably just bats. The sudden light must have stimulated them, causing them to suddenly fly toward us. Among the men, the female magician was the calmest. She was the first to discover the identity of the mysterious creatures. Fengwu and Shozo saw them too. They were just ordinary bats. Be careful, Fengwu reminded Shozo. Shozo nodded. Although it was embarrassing to be protected by a girl all the time, he could not care less if he wanted to get out. Those at the back, keep up. Everyone be careful. The person walking at the front yelled at the group. Since the place was dangerous, no one wanted to move alone. What a joke. Moving separately in a place like this was suicide. Everyone followed one another. The sound of a woman crying and the sound of flowing water could be heard from the cave. It was terrifying. Under the light, they could see that there was nothing in the cave except for a small river. The walls on both sides were smooth and moist. Everyone stepped on the water and moved forward. This sound is too strange. Is there really a ghost? Someone could not help but murmur. Don't say that. What kind of ghost could there be? It's just the sound of the wind. Yeah, it must be the sound of the wind. The others agreed. It was hard to tell if they were comforting the person or themselves. The spirits, actually, were not at the front. We're at the back. Junior, look behind you. The further they went, the heavier Shozo's heart became, as if something bad was about to happen. I have a bad feeling, Shozo whispered as he tugged on Fengwu's sleeve. There's something powerful ahead. Fengwu had already heard from Ling that there was a very troublesome big guy ahead. At this time, Bao Bao, who was sitting on Fengwu's head and dozing off, suddenly saw something. Under the water, fish tails, blood, corpses, a screaming Shozo, and humans running in all directions. Sigh, this was the downside of a drop in power. He could not see the complete future, and he could not see it on his own. He could only wait for the flash of inspiration. No one noticed that the shadows of 3 gold coins had appeared on the baby's eggshell. That's right, you didn't see wrong. They were gold coins. The 3 gold coins was Bao Bao's own special ability to predict the future. Bao Bao could predict the good or bad of what he saw. This was a complementary power to his ability to foresee the future. In the original book, the wise beast did not have such an ability. In fact, Bao Bao's original consciousness was wiped out by Zicheng. Although the other consciousness was created by Zicheng, the soul was changed. This ability to foresee the future was hidden in the depths of Bao Bao's soul. The shadows of the 3 gold coins danced on the eggshell. No one noticed it, not even Shozo, who knew about the future. The gold coins danced on the eggshell and finally calmed down. Bao Bao looked at the divination and frowned. 9 deaths. Bad omen. You two be careful. The thing ahead is very dangerous. If you're not careful, you'll die here. Bao Bao warned Xiazhua and Fengwu in a low voice. Although he liked Fengwu more, he didn't hate Xiazhua. Now that they were in a life-or-death situation, Bao Bao was afraid that he would die here if he didn't remind him. We know. Shozo responded. Fengwu nodded calmly. Xiao Wu, you must be careful. I just did a divination. It's a 9-death sign. You must be careful. Don't be careless. Bao Bao secretly used his consciousness to tell Fengwu the result of his divination. For Bao Bao, Fengwu was the master he had personally chosen. He could not let anything happen to her. Unlike auspicious beasts like phoenixes, which valued their appearance and bloodline, wise beasts valued their souls more. If anything happened to Fengwu, it would never be able to find another master who was so compatible with them. Okay. Fengwu only said one word. The group of people walked through the river, and their shoes were all wet. The further they walked, the deeper the water became. After walking for a while, the water was up to their waist. In order to find out if there was a way out, They did not care where the water was and continued to walk forward. Although Shozo was not strong, he had a lot of scrolls to protect himself. He was not afraid of moving in the water. The water was getting deeper and deeper. Finally, it was almost above their heads. Everyone, dive into the water. I suspect that the way out is under the water. Okay, let's go down and see. There may be a way out. Everyone exchanged glances. One by one, they began to activate their shields to sink. Even Shozo activated a scroll, with a water-repelling function. He used the scroll to protect himself as he sank into the water. Fengwu followed Shozo into the water. The water was very deep. The passage in the water was longer, but they did not know if it led to a way out. Fengwu protected herself with a Douqi shield and moved forward with the group. They swam along the river. Although they could not see where the end was, no one looked back. At this time, they did not know that upstream, a coffin slowly opened by itself. A beautiful woman in a red dress stood beside the coffin and screamed to the sky. Ah! The woman's voice traveled very far. It reached the depths of the passage. Unfortunately, Fengwu and the others were underwater. They did not hear anything. The red hair of the woman in red fluttered in the air, but her red eyes were looking in the direction where Fengwu and the others had left. After a long roar, she rose up against the wind and flew off the ground, quickly moving in the direction where Fengwu and the others had left. At this moment, at the end of the river, a woman who was sleeping in a huge shell, and whose lower body resembled a fish's tail, opened her eyes when she heard a long whistle. Hiss! The woman opened her mouth, revealing a mouthful of fierce fangs. The woman sat up on the shell bed. Her blue eyes were filled with killing intent as she looked upstream. Her red tongue licked her fangs, revealing a bloodthirsty smile. Fengwu and the others did not know that they were targeted by two unknown creatures. They continued to swim along the underwater passage. Chapter 391. In the underwater tunnel, the light was dim. Fortunately, the few people swimming in front had magic tools to illuminate the path ahead. Fengwu and Xiaozuo were a little behind. This tunnel was straight and extended as if there was no end. They had been swimming for so long, but they still could not see the exit. What's that? Someone exclaimed. Look ahead. Everyone looked ahead with the help of the light. They saw a huge shell bed at the bottom of the water. A beautiful woman with a fishtail was half lying on the shell bed and looking at them. The woman's uneven fangs were proof that she was not human. The woman looked at them with a hint of eagerness in her cold eyes. It was as if she was looking at some delicious food. Her long tongue licked her fangs from time to time. This scene was strange no matter how one looked at it. Is this a mermaid? Someone said with uncertainty. Mermaids were a type of creature that was very similar to mermaids. Mermaids were docile and timid. They would hide far away when they saw humans. However, mermaids were very powerful with sound attacks. Fortunately, mermaids were very peaceful and would never attack humans. If humans wanted to attack them, it would not be easy. As for mermaids, they were very similar to humans. They had a half-fish, half-human body. Their fangs were uneven like saw teeth, and they were very hostile to humans. They were warlike by nature and loved to kill. They had the ability to control water. In the water, few people were a match for them. They were one of the strongest in the sea. However, be it mermaids or mermaids, they did not like to appear in front of people. Moreover, these two races were very well hidden. No one had ever found them. A merman suddenly appeared in this place, causing everyone here to be shocked. This was the main battlefield of the mermaids. Fighting a mermaid in the water, the chances of winning were almost zero. Hiss! The female mermaid's jagged fangs made a hissing sound. A bloodthirsty red light flashed in her eyes. Everyone, prepare for battle. This is a mermaid. Following a loud roar, everyone was on guard. The woman smiled coldly and flipped her palm gently. Suddenly, two whirlpools appeared under the water. The whirlpools spun continuously, and those who were close to them were sucked into the whirlpools without being able to resist. Ah! Help! Come and save him. What's going on? I can't get out. Those who were sucked in could not get out no matter how hard they tried. They could only be sucked in by the whirlpool. Plop plop. The woman gently waved her other hand, and a few huge water pillars began to attack the humans who were not sucked into the whirlpool as if they had their own consciousness. People scrambled to avoid the attacks of the water pillars. These water pillars were extremely lethal. If they were hit, even if they didn't die, they would be seriously injured. Now, it was unknown whether those who were sucked into the whirlpool were luckier, or those who weren't sucked in were luckier. Soon they knew the answer. Those whirlpools were moved to the mermaid's side with a wave of her hand. Then, she reached out and grabbed a random person out of the whirlpool. Before that person could resist, a pair of hands with long nails reached into that person's heart. That unlucky man could only let out a scream before his heart was mercilessly dug out. The man died as his heart was dug out. Bright red blood flowed out from the hole in the man's heart, dyeing the clean water red. The mermaid grabbed the fresh heart that had just been dug out and ate it in big mouthfuls. That blissful expression made people who didn't know better think that she was eating some delicacy in the world. Everyone who saw this swallowed their saliva nervously. Although they knew that mermaids were cruel and vicious, legends were definitely just legends. At this moment, everyone truly understood how terrifying a mermaid was. To this mermaid, humans might just be her food. She didn't care about anyone here at all. So powerful. Fengwu's eyes lit up and then dimmed. What should I do if I can't beat her? Fengwu girl already knew that this mermaid with a fishtail was very powerful. She wasn't someone she could defeat now. What should I do? Fengwu thought in frustration. Xiaowu, don't be afraid. Do you see that seashell bed? We can leave from there after moving the boat away. Think of a way to lure her away from the bed. A soldier who participated in the work of sealing the underground cave popped his head out and made his presence known. These words were really easy to say. Bai Lian and Bao Bao rolled their eyes at the same time. Bai Lian had been nestling on Fengwu's little wrist, peacefully acting as a bracelet. He wasn't interested in the fierce battle in front of him at all. Of course, if Fengwu was in danger, he would still help. As for the others, it had nothing to do with him. XXX, I say, what were you guys thinking back then? Why did you seal such a powerful thing in here? Do you still want Xiaowu to get out? A beautiful and cute little maid angrily pointed at the general, who was in charge of the construction of the mausoleum, and shouted. The general laughed bitterly. You can't blame me for this. When we were building this mausoleum, we naturally did it as safely as possible. How would I know that this would happen later? The spirits thought about it and agreed. They really couldn't blame him for this. After all, he wouldn't have foreseen this before. But what should they do now? This mermaid was so powerful. With Fengwu's small arms and legs, it was really impossible for her to defeat it. Why was it so difficult to get out? Don't tell me you did something else? Someone suddenly remembered that this general was a person who liked to use double insurance. Haha, I even got my subordinates to seal a zombie upstream. The general said a little embarrassedly. If he had known what would happen later, he wouldn't have done such a troublesome thing even if he was beaten to death. Zombie. Don't tell me it's the zombie that massacred so many tribes back then. Obviously, those who knew the possible origins of this zombie all covered their mouths and exclaimed. The ancient era was an era where demons ran rampant. In that era, many dangerous creatures and humans lived in the same space. Humans were not as powerful as they were now, unifying the Heavenly Wind continent. In the Heavenly Wind continent at that time, although the human population was the largest, compared to the other races, they didn't have any advantage at all. Many powerful creatures whose legacies had long been cut off in the modern era were active in that era. They were incomparably powerful and were born with great strength. Humans couldn't compare to them. Chapter 392. At that time, no one would have thought that the last ones to unify the Heavenly Wind continent would be the humans that were looked down upon by those powerful creatures. And the zombie was one of the powerful creatures that ran amok during that time. Actually, the formation of the zombie had a lot to do with humans. In ancient times, many human tribes were used to offering sacrifices to gods or powerful demons. What did they offer as sacrifices? Beautiful virgins who had reached the age of 16. The sacrificed girls would immediately die. After the girls died, their bodies would be taken over by a small spirit called a succubus. When the two fused, the zombie was born. Of course, not all corpses could fuse with a succubus. The success rate of this fusion was not high. If it was high, the succubus would have already taken over the human world. After the fusion of corpses and succubi, a new creature was formed, a succubus. It was incomparably powerful. Its body was as hard as the hardest ore, and it could absorb human blood to evolve. The more powerful a warrior or magician was, the more delicious their body would be to the zombie demon. The zombie sealed here had destroyed a few tribes in order to evolve, sucking everyone in the tribes clean. At that time, the one in charge of getting rid of this zombie was another general. That general had wanted to kill the zombie completely, but the general in charge of building the mausoleum at that time had the idea of using this zombie to guard the only exit that had been created by the death row prisoners. Thus, this zombie managed to escape the calamity and successfully survived from 10,000 years ago until today. Since it wasn't a secret that the zombie had massacred those tribes back then, when they heard about the zombie, those in the know guessed the origin of the zombie. Fengwu successfully dodged a water pillar attack. When she knew that there was another thing that could appear at any time, her small eyebrows furrowed slightly. Fengwu, what are you thinking about? Be careful not to get hit. Xiazhua saw that Fengwu was still in a daze and said worriedly, I'm thinking about how to leave this place. Fengwu turned her head and looked at Xiazhua seriously. Leave this place? But we don't even know where the exit is. How are we supposed to leave? Shouzo also wanted to leave. Even if this was an infinite dungeon, it was better than staying here and waiting for death. I know where the exit is. It's under the shell bed, she said. Underneath the shell bed was the exit. Xiazhua was shocked. He wanted to ask who told her, but then he thought that it might be Baby Rue, so he didn't ask again. Fortunately, he did not ask. If he did, with Fengwu's character of not lying, this lie would not be easy to pull off. Everyone listen up. The exit is right under that seashell bed. As long as we move the bed away, we can leave this place. Shouzo thought for a moment, and came up with a solution. If she wanted to leave now, the only way was to gather everyone's strength. With just her and Fengwu, it was really not easy to accomplish this. Everyone who was not far from Shouzo heard this sentence. They were shocked and wanted to get closer to Shouzo to ask, but the mermaid's attacks were getting stronger. It was not easy to get close to Shouzo. Although they did not know how Shouzo knew where the exit was, they thought that he would not lie to them. At this time, there was no need for him to tell such a lie. Therefore, those who knew the way to leave spread the news to those who did not hear it. In the end, almost everyone already knew that the exit was under the shell bed. Think of a way to get her out of that bed first. Everyone thought of the same problem. They had to get the mermaid out of the shell bed. Otherwise, no one would be able to leave this place. Because they knew where the exit was, as long as they could hold on to a little hope, no one would want the only way to leave to be fake. Therefore, no one doubted the truth of this statement at all. Everyone was working hard to leave, and so was Fengwu. She successfully led Shouzo to avoid the water pillars that attacked them, and the whirlpools that occasionally circled around them. There were a few times when Shouzo was almost swept away, and it was Fengwu who pulled him back time and time again. In order to leave, everyone went from avoiding the water pillars to taking the initiative to attack. One by one, they attacked the mermaid with magic and combat energy. This mermaid was really powerful. With so many people attacking at the same time, it actually had no effect on her. No, it was not that it was useless. It was just that they were all blocked by the water shield in front of her. The water was indeed the mermaid's home ground. It was a little too difficult to hit her. Hit that bed. The only female magician suddenly shouted. Everyone immediately aimed their attacks at the mermaid at the bed. Fortunately, the shell bed was not as resistant as the mermaid. After a few magic and combat energy attacks, it was immediately blasted into pieces. There was a black whirlpool under the bed. It was obviously a teleportation channel. They should be able to teleport out of this place and leave this place. Everyone was elated. Although no one doubted whether there was really an exit, they still heaved a huge sigh of relief when they saw it. It was always good to see hope, wasn't it? Hiss! The mermaid's temper became even more irritable when she saw her beloved bed being blasted by the food. The water pillars attacked faster. There were only 2 whirlpools at first, but now there were 4. Everyone had to avoid the water pillars and pay attention to the whirlpools at all times. It could be said that they were having a hard time dodging. At this moment, the man standing on the left of Shozo suddenly could not dodge in time. He felt a strong suction force, and his body involuntarily moved towards the whirlpool. The man panicked, and almost without thinking, he pulled Shozo over to take his place. Then he successfully swapped places with Shozo and escaped. Shozo only had time to let out a scream before he was pulled in by the power of the whirlpool. Just when Shozo thought that he was going to die, a fair hand suddenly reached out. The owner of the hand pulled Shozo out skillfully, and she was sucked into the whirlpool in Shozo's place. Fengwu. Shozo, who had successfully escaped, was not excited at all. He looked at Fengwu, who was sucked into the whirlpool, in despair. His heart was filled with guilt. Fengwu. He shouted Fengwu's name in despair. However, the whirlpool directly moved him away after sucking him in. No matter how Shozo shouted, he could not call back Fengwu, who was taken away. Chapter 393. Since the start of the battle with the mermaid, less than 20 of the original 30-plus people were left. Most of them were either killed by the water column, or brought to the mermaid by the whirlpool to become its food. Seeing more and more people die in the next second, one could imagine the panic in everyone's heart. However, this was not the time for them to retreat. They had to defeat this merman and successfully leave this place. In order to get out, everyone staked everything on the battle with the mermaid. They all knew that they had to leave this place successfully, or become the mermaid's food if they failed. At this moment, the mermaid beckoned to people like before. The whirlpool that dragged Fengwu into it immediately moved towards the mermaid. The mermaid hissed twice as excitement flashed across its eyes. Among all the food, Fengwu was undoubtedly the most attractive to it. Fengwu's innate affinity and the rare vitality in her body all attracted the mermaid's desire to eat Fengwu. Originally, the mermaid wanted to leave Fengwu for last. Since it caught her early, it would be good to eat her early. The mermaid licked and swallowed. Thinking of the delicious food that was about to enter its mouth, it was extremely excited. No, Shozo shouted loudly. Although he knew that he was no match for the mermaid, he still wanted to rush to Fengwu's side with his fastest speed. She stretched out her hand with long sharp nails and grabbed Fengwu out of the whirlpool. Just as she was about to grab Fengwu's heart, a long sword pierced through her chest. The miserable cries caused the entire underwater tunnel to shake violently. Everyone was shocked by this sudden development. After the shock, they could not believe that such a powerful merman had actually been stabbed. So this was the correct way to kill a merman. Let's go. The female magician recovered quickly and immediately swam towards the exit. If they did not leave now, when would they? This voice was filled with killing intent and bloodthirsty. Everyone turned around and saw a red-haired, red-eyed woman in a red dress rushing towards them at an extremely fast speed. That earth-shattering aura made it clear at a glance that this was a powerful existence. Let's go. He had just killed one, and now another one had appeared. What was going on? Everyone didn't even look back. They immediately increased their speed and mana output, wanting to leave this dangerous place before the other big guy arrived. Everyone rushed towards the exit. After Fengwu stabbed the mermaid with her pure sword, she did not care whether she was dead or not. She pulled out her sword and left immediately. She pulled Xiazhua, who was not far away, and rushed towards the exit. Xiazhua felt as if something was pushing his body forward at an extremely fast speed. In fact, there really was something pushing them from behind. It was the group of spirits that followed Fengwu. Although they did not attack earlier, they had been carefully protecting Fengwu. Even the idea of using the whirlpool to complete the sneak attack was suggested by the Emperor Spirit. Then Bao Bao and White Lotus thought that the idea was good and supported her. They did not expect it to succeed in the end. Fengwu did not know whether the mermaid would die or not. Anyway, it was like what Bao Bao said. After being injured by the pure sword, even if it did not die, it would take a long time for it to recover. Finally, at the last moment when the red figure arrived, everyone successfully ran to the teleportation point and finally left. All the spirits. Hello zombie, goodbye zombie. After entering the teleportation point, Fengwu felt the world spin and she appeared in a desert. What was this place? Fengwu was a little confused. There was no one around her. What happened? At this time in another space, Xiazhua frowned and looked around. It was an ice field. There was no one around except for 2 or 3 people who were fighting side by side. Yo, pretty boy, you are alone this time. Hand over your space ring. The man who spoke had an evil smile and looked at Xiazhua with a face full of evil intentions. The other 2 people beside him were the female magician who left first and a powerful swordsman. However, they did not intend to meddle in other people's business. They just looked around. When Xiazhua saw this person, he immediately recognized that he was the man who helped him escape not long ago. If this person did not plot against him, Fengwu would not be involved in the whirlpool to save him. If it was not for Fengwu's skills, if it was someone else, they would have died in the mermaid's hands. Xiazhua, who was always good-tempered, had a rare murderous intent towards this man. Although he did not have any power now, his father gave him a lot of self-defense items. It was just that he did not have a chance to use them because Fengwu was protecting him. What's wrong, kid? Are you waiting for that woman to save you? A useless pretty boy like you should not come to a place like this. You are really overestimating yourself. The man sneered and looked at Xiazhua with disdain. If you want my space ring, come and get it yourself. Xiazhua looked at the man in front of him calmly without a trace of panic in his eyes. The man was alert. Could it be that this kid still had some tricks up his sleeve? Kid, don't try to play tricks in front of me. The man cursed but did not immediately step forward. Although the man spoke with disdain, he had never really let down his guard. Who could walk out alive like that? Who would be a retard with a head full of grass? Young master. Suddenly a surprised voice was heard. A slightly chubby girl ran towards Xiazhua excitedly. Yuan. Xiazhua's heart skipped a beat. He turned around and saw that it was his little maid, Yuan. Oh. Young master, are you alright? Yuan was worried sick. Young master, are you hurt? Were you bullied by anyone? Oh, if I knew it was so dangerous here. Yuan would not have let young master come no matter what. Yuan hugged Xiazhua's arm and leaned on his shoulder. It was raining heavily. Xiazhua patted Yuan's head dotingly. Yuan was an orphan. She was adopted by the family because of her outstanding talent. Because she was naive and did not know how to please the management, she was assigned to be a maid in the house of this useless son of the first wife. Yuan was a very loyal little girl. In his previous life, he almost died in the space crack. It was Yuan who saved him with her chubby little body. He loved Yuan like a little sister and swore that he would not let Yuan die for him again in this life. Chapter 394. Yuan was a very loyal little girl. In his previous life, he almost died under the spatial crack. It was Yuan, this little girl, who used her chubby little body to save him. To Yuan, he doted on her like a little sister, thinking that he would never let Yuan die for him again in this life. Aren't I fine now? Oh right, where's the housekeeper? You guys aren't together? Xiazhua did not see the housekeeper, so he asked. Yuan shook her head. I didn't see the housekeeper. Yuan and the housekeeper were originally together, but we were separated during the teleportation. Yuan and the housekeeper had already been through an emperor's tomb and successfully escaped from that emperor's tomb. They were teleported to a new map, but it was a pity that the 2 of them did not meet again during the teleportation. Yuan originally felt uneasy, but fortunately, after seeing the young master, her uneasiness disappeared. Young master. Yuan wanted to say something, but she was unexpectedly interrupted. Brat, quickly hand over your spatial ring, and this little girl's as well. I don't have that much time to wait for you. The one who spoke was the man who made things difficult for Xiazhua. This person had been eyeing Xiazhua for a long time, and had been drooling over the good things in his spatial ring for a long time. This time, no matter what, he would not let go of this opportunity. Not to mention that it was just a little chubby girl. Even if it was an expert of the same level as him, he would still have the power to fight. Who are you? Yuan turned to look at the man who spoke. as if she only just realized that there was someone standing in front of her young master. Why do you care who I am? Quickly hand over your spatial ring. The man said impatiently. You want to rob the young master? Yuan's eyes turned cold, and the original innocent expression on her face became a little strange. Little girl, if you don't want to die, hurry up. The man wanted to say a few harsh words to make them quickly hand over their things, but he did not expect that the little girl, who was not a threat in his eyes, would directly pull out her sword and stab towards the man's heart. This sword contained many changes, and with one look, one could tell that it was not something an ordinary sword technique could achieve. The man was shocked, and immediately raised his sword to block. Although he blocked the sword, he took a few steps back, and the blood in his chest churned. The man was shocked. Who exactly was this girl? She called that pretty boy young master. Could it be that the person with such sword skills was just a maid, or an attendant of a pretty boy young master? Regardless of how shocked the man was, Yuan changed his sword stance and continued to attack without stopping. Every time he blocked Yuan's sword, the man felt that the sword was getting heavier and heavier. Finally, after more than 10 moves, the man could no longer hold the sword in his hand, and was sent flying by Yuan's sword. The sword in the man's hand was deflected several meters away by Roly-Poly's sword. The man's face was pale, and there was a long sword in his heart. You. The man only managed to say 2 words before he spat out a mouthful of blood. In the end, his eyes dimmed and lost their luster. Pulling out the sword, Yuan casually shook the sword under the horrified gazes of the other 2 spectators. The blood on the sword was casually flung to the ground, and not a single drop of blood was left on the sword. The sword was still as clean as a mirror. If it was not for the fact that someone had witnessed this battle, no one would believe that this sword that did not have a single drop of blood on it was stained with human blood. The female magician and swordmaster who had been observing the battle did not think that this ordinary girl would have such strength. Also, the identity of this young man had aroused their suspicions. An ordinary aristocrat would definitely not be able to afford an attendant of this level. Who exactly was this young man? The 2 of them were a little regretful. Perhaps they should have made a move just now. That way, they might have been able to form a good relationship with him in the future. It was a pity that money could not buy them. After Yuan finished dealing with the lowly man who dared to be disrespectful to her young master, she shifted her gaze to the other 2 people. She saw that they had no intention of making a move, and that they did not speak up to bully her young master with the man just now. Therefore, Yuan's gaze only lingered on the 2 of them for a moment before moving away. Fengwu was unaware of all this. She was currently in the middle of a desert, and there was not a single person around her. In the sky, the scorching sun looked as if it was going to roast people. Fengwu's little face was red, and there was a thin layer of sweat on her forehead. She held a water bag in her hand, and gulped down a few mouthfuls of water. Bao, where is this place? There was no one around, so Fengwu could only ask Bao, who seemed to know a lot of things. If I'm not mistaken, this place should be the tomb of the Tsar. Bao really did not let Fengwu know. Tsar? Fengwu tilted her little head, trying to recall if she had read about this character in a book. After thinking for a while, she recalled. I know him. The book said that the Tsar was the master of the Sand Country. In the ancient times, he was also a peerless expert. Later on, because of the War of the 2 Worlds, the Tsar and the Sand Country were destroyed in that battle. Now the Sand Country no longer exists. The Fengwu girl liked to read, and had read a lot of knowledge before. She had some understanding of this Sand Country. That's right. The Sand Country has long perished. Even the Tsar's tomb was built by the survivors of the Sand Country for the Tsar. I'm not surprised that the sea god moved the Tsar's tomb here, but it's too unreasonable for him to move the entire Sand Country here. Bao could not understand why the sea god would move the entire Sand Country here. Even the Spirit King's tomb had only been moved, hadn't it? I think I know the reason, the Imperial Spirit King said. There were over 1,000 spirit bodies following behind the Imperial Spirit. Under such intense light, they did not feel uncomfortable at all. All of them were living more casually than Fengwu. What's the reason? Fengwu asked, blinking her big eyes. The Imperial Spirit King smiled and said, The reason is very simple. The Tsar's tomb has long been connected to the Sand Country. Back then, when the Sand Country was destroyed, the last survivors of the Sand Country sealed up the entire country as the Tsar's tomb. Therefore, if the sea god wanted to move the Tsar's tomb, he could only move the Sand Country along with it. So the reason was that simple. So that was the case. Fengwu nodded in understanding. So the place they were at was the Sand Country. Fengwu thought of the description of the Sand Country in the book. It was an oasis in the desert, the most beautiful desert city. However, she did not see any oasis. What was going on? Fengwu asked her question directly. The Imperial Spirit King explained to Fengwu in a good-natured manner. So, the description in the book was merely the scenery of the ancient desert city. Chapter 395. The Sand Country only had one city, which was the ancient desert city. However, its territory was very big. The ancient desert city spanned over 10,000 kilometers of desert, and all of it belonged to the Sand Country. Of course, in a place surrounded by sand like this, the living conditions were not good. The reason why no one came to fight for territory was because the Sand Country had a larger territory. Many small countries only had half the size of the Sand Country. For the Sand Country to have such a large territory, it was already considered an amazing existence among the small countries. If we want to leave, is the only way to leave this place if we find the Sand Emperor's tomb? As Fengwu had a group of smart helpers, she was able to think through many things. That's right. This is the only way to leave. Bao Bao nodded. Fengwu understood. Although she understood, how were they going to find the rumored Sand Country that had been destroyed in this desert that had no end in sight? She wasn't afraid. Her master had said that she mustn't give up easily in the face of any difficulties. She would definitely find the Sand Emperor's tomb. Fengwu clenched her paws cutely, strengthening her conviction. The scorching sun above their heads was getting hotter and hotter, making them feel dizzy. Although Fengwu had battle chi to protect her, she still felt a little tired. Under Bao Bao's suggestion, Fengwu found a pile of rocks and hid under a big rock to hide from the sun. She also ate something while she was at it. There was a lot of food in Fengwu's spatial ring. Usually, as long as she ate something that was not bad, she would collect a big pile and put it into her spatial ring. Her friends all knew that she had a hobby of collecting delicacies. Therefore, when they came across something good, they would also pack a big pile for her. As a result, even Fengwu herself did not know how much food she had in her spatial ring. Fengwu used her spiritual force to dig out a large bowl of porridge from a pile of delicious food. There was a faint osmanthus fragrance in the porridge. She didn't know who packed it for her, but Fengwu kept it in her ring and didn't eat much. Now that she was in a desert, she finally wanted to eat porridge. Fengwu gobbled down the porridge with barbecued meat and a plate of pickled radishes. It tasted delicious. Many people would not have a good appetite in hot weather, but Fengwu girl had never had such a problem. She would never let the weather affect her appetite. Bao Bao was sitting next to Fengwu and gnawing on a large chicken leg. Bai Lian was even more delighted as she hugged a whole chicken. After being locked up in a place for so many years, Bai Lian had never eaten anything decent. He had never even eaten meat. Although he grew up in a pool, there was not a single fish in the pool. He usually ate fruits to fill his stomach. It would be a dream to eat meat that only appeared in the inheritance. Ever since he followed Fengwu, Bai Lian, who had been a vegetarian for 20 years, finally tasted meat. Bai Lian was almost moved to tears when he tasted the delicious taste of meat for the first time. He had a crazy love for meat since then. As for the king's spirit, they did not need to eat anything at all. They were originally spirits. Spirits did not need to eat human food. Fengwu and Bao Bao were eating and chatting. Suddenly, a voice sounded. Olifman, Sherrod, Chukri, let's go to the front and rest. It's too hot. Elena and I can't take it anymore. A weak voice was heard. From the voice, one could tell that it was a young woman. May Irene is right. I can't take it anymore. This woman should be Elena. Her voice was pleasing to the ear, making people want to love her tenderly. Okay, then let's go to the front and rest. The three men immediately nodded when Elena spoke. There's someone here. Alifman said with some surprise. He didn't expect that someone would arrive here earlier than them. He felt a little surprised. She's just a single woman. Just drive her away. May Irene, who could not stand the heat, said grumpily. That's not good. Elena was a little hesitant. What's not good about it? She's been resting here for so long. She's taking up so much space by herself. If Mingxi comes later, there won't be a place to rest. May Irene knew that Elena was interested in Mingxi, so she deliberately said Mingxi's name so that Elena could not refuse. But Elena was a little hesitant. She did not want to make things difficult for a single woman for a place to rest. However, they also needed to rest, and the only place to rest was under this big rock. In addition, Mingxi had taken care of her a lot along the way. She also wanted her sweetheart to have a good place to rest. She did not want an outsider to disturb him. The three men exchanged glances with each other. They were all Elena's pursuers. Although they didn't know each other before entering the divine tomb, they were deeply attracted to Elena's cuteness and kindness. Mingxi was their common love rival. The three of them were very unhappy that Elena was treating this man so favorably. If it were not for the fact that they could not beat Mingxi, they would have already dragged Mingxi to the side and secretly killed him. I see that the space under this rock is quite big. We can all sit if we squeeze together. Why must you chase the little girl away? May Irene, your thoughts are too vicious. At this time, a woman's voice sounded. This woman was not very old. She was about 17 or 18 years old like the two girls in front of her. Beside the young girl was a man. This man was actually Le Chun, the son of Island Master Le. A man and a woman slowly walked over like a pair of jade. Fengli. Le Chun. You two came back so quickly? Chukri was a little surprised to see them, but he was not surprised. It was obvious that they were originally together. Didn't we say that we would split up to explore? The few of you are still in the mood to find a place to sit and enjoy the shade. Fengli looked at May Irene with disdain. She was very disdainful of May Irene. We are tired from exploring. Why don't you let us rest? May Irene said unhappily. Your so-called rest is to snatch someone else's place to rest and then chase them away? Fengli smiled meaningfully. What do you mean? This place is not hers to begin with. Moreover, this is a world where the strong are respected. If she can't keep her place to rest, how can she blame us? Sophistry. The two of them started arguing. The main character of this matter, Fengwu, was holding her big bowl of porridge. Her eyes were wide open as she looked at the quarreling people in front of her. Her small mouth was constantly stuffing food into it. Mingxi? Senior Mingxi? Fengwu was a little happy. She had made up her mind to wait here for her senior Mingxi. Stop arguing. Elena was so anxious that she stomped her feet. The three men and Luchen were also trying to mediate. Unfortunately, it was really hard to mediate when women quarreled. Chapter 396. What are you doing? A silvery white figure gradually approached. It was a golden-haired, blue-eyed young man. The young man's facial features were perfect, as if they were the masterpiece of the god of creation. His temperament was as noble as the bright moon above the clouds, making people unable to reach him. Mingxi. The three women stood up at the same time and tidied up their appearance. Their slightly shy and nervous expressions were completely different from before. Elena looked shyly at the young man walking towards them. Irene knew that she couldn't win against Elena. Although she didn't want to fight with Elena for Mingxi, she didn't want Mingxi to see her bad side. As for Fengli, she also had a faint affection for Mingxi. However, she knew that she was only the daughter of an ordinary hunter. If she hadn't been lucky enough to be discovered with her talent for magic, she might still be hunting with her father in the village. And Mingxi was not a child of an ordinary family. Fengli could see this, so she had never shown much enthusiasm or initiative towards Mingxi. But at the same time, she did not want such a perfect young man to see her arguing with others. Elena was about to answer Mingxi's question when she saw a shadow pass by her and rush into the arms of the beautiful young man. Senior Mingxi. Fengwu rubbed her little head against Mingxi's chest happily. Being able to see Mingxi put Fengwu in a good mood. She felt like she could eat 2 more drumsticks. Xiaowu. Mingxi was also very surprised. He didn't expect to meet Fengwu here. Ever since the two of them separated, he had been worried about Fengwu's safety. He was worried that this innocent girl would be in danger, whether she would be injured, and so on. Now that he saw Fengwu appear in front of him safe and sound, Mingxi smiled and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Elena looked at this scene with a sour feeling in her heart. She could not believe that Mingxi would let this strange girl throw herself into his arms. She knew that Mingxi was a person who looked gentle, but was actually not easy to get close to. Every time she took the initiative to get close to him, he would easily push her away. No matter how hard she tried to express her feelings, Mingxi always had a way to put distance between them without leaving a trace. This made Elena, who had always been successful among men, very depressed. Originally, she thought that Mingxi was born this way. Didn't he treat other women the same way? Whether it was Mei Irene or Fengli, Mingxi was equally cold. This made her even more confident that she could become a different woman in his heart. She had always believed that she and Mingxi were predestined by fate, that they were destined to be together. If it wasn't fated, how could she have met Mingxi the first time she was teleported out? The second time they were teleported out, the two of them were still together. Who could say that they weren't fated to be together? Apart from her and Mingxi, they had met the others when they entered the second teleportation point. Although Mei Irene, Olifman, Sherrod, and Chukri were all her old friends, Elena was different. Elena, who had always believed that she was a little different to Mingxi, suddenly felt a deep sense of danger when she saw Mingxi hugging Fengwu and comforting her softly. Was this girl a different existence to Mingxi? No. No. Mingxi is mine. From the first time I saw him, I knew that we were fated to be together. No one can take Mingxi away from me. Mei Irene was no less shocked than Elena when she saw this scene. It was fine if she lost to Elena. Elena's family background and talent were no match for hers. But what was up with this woman? Mei Irene looked left and right, but she couldn't see where she lost to Fengwu. She hated Fengwu, a woman who was inferior to her, but who was able to make Mingxi look at her differently. Fengli's attitude was the best. She knew that a man like Mingxi wouldn't belong to an ordinary girl like her. She might be envious and slightly jealous of Fengwu, who was in Mingxi's arms, but she didn't hate or feel indignant. Mingxi? This is? Elena squeezed out a smile on her pale face. She looked like she was pretending to be strong and gentle. However, Mingxi turned a blind eye to her attitude. He maintained a polite smile on his face and replied indifferently. This is my junior sister, Fengwu. She's one of the people who entered the sea god's tomb with me this time. Fengwu poked her head out of Mingxi's arms and turned to look at the pale Elena. Wow. Look, these three women all like this man. But he's really good looking. I've never seen such a good looking man before. Is he our benefactor's boyfriend? I think so. Didn't you see how our benefactor threw herself into his arms the moment she saw him? But this man is not bad. His body has a rich natural aura. It smells so good. He's really a man of the highest quality. He's worthy of our benefactor. Look, these two women are so shameless. Especially the one who's talking. She clearly wants Xiaowu to die, but she's still acting like she's been cheated on. Isn't that so? Bitches are so pretentious. Who does she think she is? How dare she fight with our benefactor for a man? Let's kill her. A group of spirits surrounded Elena and Irene and pointed at them. Fengli, on the other hand, was ignored because she didn't have any ill intentions. Spirit bodies were sensitive, especially to the changes in qi. They didn't need to look to know if a person had good intentions. They could feel it with their senses. I won't give Senior Mingxi to you. He'll be the father of my child. Although Fengwu was happy to see her beloved Mingxi, she had been listening to the spirits' conversation. From these conversations, the Fengwu girl knew that someone was trying to steal her father from Xiaoyi. At this moment, her little universe exploded. After hearing Mingxi's explanation, Elena didn't even have time to breathe a sigh of relief. She was immediately stifled by Fengwu's words, and almost suffered internal injuries. Elena's face was almost distorted. This woman was too shameless. She was just a junior, but she actually said that he was the father of her future child. How old was she? At most she was 15 or 16. She was so young and yet she was talking about a child. She was simply shameless to the extreme. She looked at Mingxi hopefully, hoping that Mingxi would refute her and let her know that she shouldn't speak carelessly. It was best to stop daydreaming. However, she didn't expect that Mingxi would only smile helplessly and dotingly. He stroked Fengwu's hair and said, "Xiaowu, stop fooling around." When Elena heard these words that didn't contain any criticism, she was so sad that she almost died. Could it be that Mingxi was really interested in this shameless woman? No. How could this be? She wouldn't agree. She wouldn't agree no matter what. Chapter 397. When Eileen heard these words that did not contain any accusation, her heart almost died. Could it be that Mingxi was really interested in this shameless woman? No. How could this be? She would not agree. No matter what, she would not agree. She did not even think about why Mingxi had to ask her to agree to it. Hehe, Fengwu is such an interesting girl. Anyone with a functioning ear would know how insincere those words were. I didn't expect to meet a junior from Mingxi here. Why don't we all sit down and talk? The sun is too hot. Lu Chen pointed at the scorching sun above his head, pretending to be relaxed as he spoke. That's right, that's right. Let's go hide from the sun first. Olifman, Sherrod and Chukri agreed. The three of them secretly wiped the sweat off their heads. The atmosphere was too depressing. The three of them felt even hotter. Mingxi nodded in agreement. This place was indeed unbearably hot. Thus, with Lu Chen taking the lead, the few of them hid in the place where Fengwu was hiding from the sun. It was actually a small space made up of piles of rocks. Although it was not very big, it was still enough for the few of them to squeeze together. Fengwu, we saw you eating just now. Do you have more? We can buy it with money. Can you sell us some food? Sherrod were already so hungry that they could not care less. They had no choice but to eat potions along the way because they had already run out of food. Even if the three of them were born in a good family, they could not afford to use such expensive potions to fill their stomachs. They had brought enough potions, medicine, scrolls, and weapons for this exploration of the sea god's tomb. However, they had brought the least amount of food and water. How could they have imagined that they would end up in a desert like this? Who else could tell them that this place was clearly the sea god's tomb? Why would there be a desert here? This was illogical. I can sell some to you. Fengwu was still interested in earning money. Only by earning more money could she buy all kinds of delicious food. Then what do you have here? Give us some of everything. Don't worry, we won't shortchange you. Olifman did not expect to be able to buy food. He almost thought that he was dreaming. In this kind of place without food and water, who would be willing to take out some food? That was why they wanted to buy food with money. They did not expect that she would be willing to sell them food. As long as there was food, they could accept it even if it was 10 times more expensive than outside. No matter how expensive it was, it could not be more expensive than potions. But it turned out that they were too naive. What? 100 gold coins. Chukri pointed at the food that Fengwu had divided into several bags, which were packed according to the number of people. Everyone was given a bag of 100 gold coins each. The bag was made of craft paper. Fengwu's space ring contained all kinds of things. No one knew when she had put the craft paper bag in, but it came in handy now. Are these things gilded with gold? How can they be so expensive? The people of Heavenly Wind Continent had always valued martial arts. Anything related to magic or dochi could be sold at a high price. On the other hand, food could not be sold at a high price. Even in the most luxurious restaurant in the continent, a meal would only cost a few hundred gold coins. However, Fengwu only sold some snacks that could be bought anywhere on the street for 100 gold coins. In their eyes, this price was a little too high. If you think it's too expensive, you don't have to buy it. Fengwu looked calmly at the sun hanging high in the sky and said, I'll buy it. Chukri was only surprised by the price. He did not say that he would not buy it. If he did not buy it, even if they wanted to buy it for 500 gold coins, no one would be willing to sell it to them. Why wouldn't we buy it? This brat is not making a fuss over nothing. He came to Fengwu to collect money. This is mine. This is mine. Here's the money. I'll take one too. Soon these fellows each took away a big bag of food. In front of Fengwu was a pile of gold coins. Fengwu looked at the pile of gold coins and smiled. Mingxi could easily tell that she was in a good mood. He patted the girl's head and did not ask much about the sudden appearance of Eggface. He only thought that it was an opportunity that Fengwu obtained in the sea god's tomb. Although Fengwu's food was a little expensive, everyone still bought it. Even May, Irene and Elena each bought a big bag of food and stored it in their own spatial items. With food, these fellows who had been hungry for a long time naturally had to eat a big meal. Each of them took out the amount they wanted and ate in big mouthfuls. As they ate, they chatted. These people were all sent here after passing the first emperor's tomb. Although they had already passed the first emperor's tomb, they did not understand the situation of the sea god's tomb. They thought that it was a normal trial. Quick, look over there. Do you see words on that rock? Lu Chun was just casually looking outside, but he didn't expect to see an unexpected scene. The continent's common language was gradually appearing. Those words all appeared out of thin air. Let's go take a look. These people stopped eating and quickly walked towards the big rock. The few of them walked closer and saw that the words that appeared on the big rock were, First stage, pass through the desert and find the ancient desert city. Interesting. It seems like it's the same place we were sent to the first time. There's also a hint. Lu Chun laughed. But where is the ancient desert city? May Irene asked curiously. You'll know when we get there. Chukri said indifferently. Let's go. Let's go back and sit down. The weather is so hot that it's about to roast us. Sherrod fanned himself with his hand. Returning to the big rock, everyone sat together and discussed how to find the ancient desert city. Where was the ancient desert city? They did not even have a specific direction. If they wanted to find it, they had to determine the direction first. However, Mingxi and the others did not know that they were not the only ones in the desert. There were others who had also been sent to this Sand Country instance dungeon. The only difference was that everyone had landed in a different place. At the same time, the same hint appeared in many places in the desert. Some of these people who saw the hint lowered their heads and frowned in thought. Some sat somewhere to avoid the sun, seemingly not caring about the hint at all. Most of them were like Mingxi and the others, sitting together and discussing where the ancient desert city was. Mingxi and the others discussed for a long time before finally deciding on a direction. This was also the direction that Mingxi and the others thought was most likely to appear in the ancient desert city. Chapter 398. Fengwu had been sitting at the side and listening to their conversation, her little hand tugging at the corner of Mingxi's shirt. Mingxi noticed that Fengwu seemed to have something to say. After everyone finished their discussion, he turned to face Fengwu. What's wrong? Do you have something to say? Mingxi smiled gently, but there was more sincerity in his smile compared to when he was facing Elena and the others. This place was only so big. Even if the others didn't want to eavesdrop, they could still hear Mingxi's question to Fengwu. Everyone was quite curious about Fengwu. Mingxi wasn't someone who was easy to get close to, but he treated Fengwu so differently. How could they not be curious? Senior Mingxi, do you know where this place is? Fengwu blinked her eyes, bit her lower lip, and suddenly asked seriously. I don't know. Mingxi shook his head. He really didn't know where this place was. He only knew that he was in the sea god's tomb. Isn't this the sea god's tomb? What a stupid question. Irene May glanced at Fengwu in disdain. Irene May, don't be like this. Elena gave Fengwu an apologetic smile. However, when she looked over, she realized that neither Mingxi nor Fengwu had looked over at her. Elena lowered her head in embarrassment, hiding the hatred in the depths of her eyes. This is the Sand Country, and also the Sand Emperor's tomb. Fengwu's voice was still soft, but the words she said stunned everyone. What did she mean by this was the Sand Country? What did she mean by this was the Sand Emperor's tomb? Wasn't this the sea god's tomb? Sand Country. Based on what I know, there was a place called the Sand Country in ancient times. There are records in the ancient books in my family. The Sand Country disappeared together with the death of the Tsar in ancient times. No one has even found the remains of the Sand Country. Mingxi thought back a little, and recalled that there was a record of the Sand Country in a book he had read when he was young. However, Feng Wu said that this place was the Sand Country, the Sand Country that had disappeared since ancient times. This was truly too unbelievable. If he wasn't familiar with Feng Wu's temperament and knew that she wouldn't lie, Mingxi wouldn't believe such unbelievable words if they came from someone else's mouth. Do you think this is the Sand Country or the Tsar's tomb? What kind of joke is this? This is clearly the sea god's tomb. Is your brain damaged from the heat? Mei Irene sneered. It wasn't easy for her to strike a blow at this woman whom she didn't like. Of course, she wouldn't be merciful. You're the one who's out of your mind. Feng Wu glared at her and replied earnestly. You. Mei Irene was enraged. She was just about to charge up and fight it out with Feng Wu when she was held back by Eileen. Eileen shook her head, indicating that she didn't want to. They couldn't take the initiative to attack Feng Wu in front of Mingxi. Mei Irene could only return to her seat, her expression still a little unwilling. Why do you say that this is the Sand Country and also the Tsar's tomb? He ignored the others. He was very sure that Feng Wu must have known something, which was why she had said this. The places we've been transported to the past 2 times were the tombs of human emperors from ancient times. Back then, the sea god knew that he didn't have much time left. Fearing that his tomb would be stolen by humans when his power weakened after his death, he used his divine power to move the tombs of all the famous human emperors into his tomb. Meanwhile, the sea god's own tomb was surrounded by the tombs of these emperors. It's very difficult to find it, so you can only rely on luck. And this isn't the most troublesome thing. In order to ensure that his tomb would never be stolen, the sea god sealed the souls of those ancient emperors and those who were buried with him. Those sealed souls would be tortured by their souls every day. When those souls were injured, they would produce a strong murderous aura. That murderous aura became the strongest defense in the sea god's tomb. Feng Wu told Mingxi everything that she had heard from Bao Bao. Although there were still a few fellows who were eavesdropping, she couldn't be bothered. She only wanted Senior Mingxi to know the truth. This is unbelievable. The sea god is an innate divine being. How could his heart be so cruel? He imprisoned the spirit of the human race's emperor for 10,000 years just to make me guard his coffin. Feng Li exclaimed in disbelief. Yeah, it's simply unbelievable. Lu Chun sighed. Wait, how do you know all this? Mei Irene discovered this loophole and directly questioned Feng Wu. In the tomb I stayed in last time, there were some related records. I knew after reading it. Bao Bao had taught her this. Bao Bao's identity was an absolute secret. When Feng Wu was about to tell the truth, Bao Bao and the other spirits had already thought of what to say. So that's how it is. Everyone nodded. Although Mei Irene wanted to cause trouble, there was no big problem with what Feng Wu said. She didn't have a valid reason to do so, so she could only sit aside angrily and sulk. So we thought we were just trying to break through, but in reality, these tombs are the burial grounds of all the emperors of the past. Olifman stroked his chin. He didn't doubt Feng Wu's words. After all, the zombies that Feng Wu mentioned matched their experiences. So if we want to leave this place, the only way is to find the Sand Emperor's tomb and kill our way out. Eileen was also a very smart girl. It didn't take her long to figure out some things. Yeah. Feng Wu nodded. How would we know where the Sand Emperor's tomb is? Sherrod said in a bad mood. We don't need to know because there will be a hint for us, Mingxi said calmly. Yes, there will be a hint. Everyone's eyes lit up as they finally thought of this. It's good that there is a hint. If there wasn't a hint and we had to find the Sand Emperor's tomb, that would be terrible. The entire desert is so big, who knows where we can find it? Everyone complained. The sun outside was still so bright, and there was no sign of it cooling down at all. Everyone could only continue to hide under the rocks, hoping that it would be better at night. The desert at night wasn't as good as everyone thought. The sun had set, but the moon had risen again. If the sun brought endless heat, then the moon brought endless cold. It was still so hot during the day, but at night it was as cold as the extreme north. It was even raining and snowing. Although the weather suddenly became cold, everyone still decided to catch up at night. Each of them held a magic umbrella that Feng Wu had bought for several times more than usual. This umbrella could not only block the rain, but also the wind. The wind blocking effect was only 30%, but it was better than nothing. Chapter 399. The desert at night was completely different from the desert during the day. During the day, the temperature was as high as 40 degrees Celsius, but at night, the temperature was as low as -10 degrees Celsius. Walking in the desert, everyone was still wearing summer clothes. Their clothes were very thin, and only a few of them had extra insulation. Some of them were so cold that their teeth were chattering. If it was cold weather, it would be impossible to see this in many countries. Fengwu's clothes couldn't keep her warm. She could only use her douqi to create a shield for herself to resist the cold. Mingxi, on the other hand, didn't seem to feel the cold at all. He seemed to be in a good state. Elena and the others were guessing how powerful Mingxi was. Even such cold weather couldn't do anything to him. What they didn't know was that the cold weather didn't affect him at all, because it was night. At night, the moon was bright in the sky. The sun and moon of this world were real, not illusions created by the god of the sea. The sea god used her divine power to borrow a trace of the sun essence from the land of extreme yang, and then obtained a trace of the moon's extreme yin energy from the extreme cold of the extreme north. Only then did these two sun and moon, which were almost identical to the real thing, appear. As the next emperor of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom, Mingxi was naturally protected by the moon, so the cold couldn't hurt him at all. Because she didn't know this, Elena thought that Mingxi, who wasn't afraid of the cold, was a hidden expert. The group braved the wind and snow and walked forward. They didn't know how long they had been walking. Although the wind and snow didn't get heavier, it didn't seem like it was going to stop. After walking for a while, not far ahead, they actually found a small rocky mountain. At the foot of the rocky mountain, there was a cave. The cave was still flickering with fire. Mingxi knew that it was impossible for them to continue walking. In such cold weather, even if everyone had the protection of magic and douqi, it was impossible to walk too far. After all, magic and douqi were consumables. Once they were consumed, they could only wait for them to recover by themselves or consume potions. In the wind and snow, waiting for douqi and magic to recover by themselves was like waiting for death. They would be frozen into ice sculptures before they could recover their strength. On the other hand, consuming potions would burn too much money, and they didn't have that many potions to consume. After walking for such a long time tonight, everyone was almost at their limit. They had to find a place to rest. After everyone exchanged their opinions, everyone agreed to go to that place to take shelter from the wind and snow. At most, they would walk more during the day to make up for the distance. As he walked into the cave, he could feel the faint light of the fire coming from the cave. Could it be that there was someone inside? Everyone guessed. Regardless of whether there was anyone inside, they were all so cold that they couldn't stand it anymore. At most, they would just squeeze in with the people inside. After making up his mind, Mingxi walked at the front, followed closely by Fengwu, Elena, and the other girls. The rest of the youths walked at the back. They carefully moved forward and finally entered the cave. Sure enough, there were people in the cave, and they were familiar faces. It was Zicheng and Eve. The two of them were quite lucky and hadn't been separated from each other since entering the Tomb of the Gods. In addition to the two girls, there were two men. One of them had a long sword beside him, while the other had nothing beside him. However, just by looking at his magician's robe, one could tell that he was a magician. The one with the long sword was called Junziya, a direct descendant of the Jun family of the ancient eastern country. The other man was Caesar. Of course, it was impossible for Caesar to be separated from the female lead. Even though they had been teleported twice, they hadn't been separated. Along the way, their relationship had improved a little. Zicheng had raised his favorability to over 90, but unfortunately, it still hadn't reached 100. Zicheng knew that the calmer and more self-controlled people like him, the harder it was to raise his favorability. She wasn't in a hurry. She was confident that she could win this man over. The four people in the cave were shocked by the sudden appearance of Mingxi's group, especially Zicheng. She didn't expect to meet the person she didn't want to meet the most so soon. Back on Demon Wind Island, In order to obtain the demon's suppressing sword, she had released the ancient demon general and almost caused a disaster. Mingxi, who had witnessed everything, would definitely report this to the school. When that happened, what awaited her would be a virgin from Notre Dame du Starlight. Because of this, Zicheng's face turned pale. Eve and Caesar didn't notice it. Their attention was now focused on Mingxi's group who had just entered the cave. "I'm sorry, the snowstorm outside is too heavy. Can we rest here for the night?" Luchen asked sincerely. "Of course." Zhenzia nodded. Although he was expressionless and looked a little cold, from his words, one could tell that he wasn't a cold person. "Thank you." Luchen represented everyone and thanked Zhenzia. Zhenzia nodded nonchalantly and didn't look at them anymore. Mingxi led Luchen and the rest to build a fire to warm themselves. Fortunately, everyone had brought along quite a few magical items to start a fire in the wild. After walking for a while, Luchen and the rest were tired and thirsty. The moment they sat down, they took out the food they had bought from Fengwu. Ignoring the fact that there were outsiders around, they started eating in big mouthfuls. "Senior Mingxi, I didn't expect to see you here." Eve looked at Mingxi in surprise. Eve had learned her lesson this time. She didn't rush up to Fengwu and bark at her. Instead, she started to ignore Fengwu. Mingxi replied with a faint smile. Those who knew him well would know that this was just Mingxi's habitual smile. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Eve clearly didn't know. Because of Mingxi's reply, she gave Fengwu a provocative look. She knew that Fengwu was interested in Mingxi. If she could steal Senior Mingxi's heart, wouldn't Fengwu cry herself to death? The more Eve thought about it, the more she felt that this method was feasible. Eve's gaze towards Mingxi softened, with a hint of girlish shyness. Eve wanted to attract Mingxi's attention, but of course, it wasn't just to take revenge on Fengwu. Seeing her in pain was only one of the reasons. More importantly, she herself felt that Mingxi was an extremely outstanding man. Although she didn't know what his family background was like, from his aura, he was definitely from a noble family. His status was quite compatible with hers, are you sure? In this way, she could attack Fengwu and get a peerless handsome man. How could Eve not be interested? She could already see the boys and girls in school who admired Mingxi looking at her with envy and jealousy. If Mingxi knew what she was thinking, he would definitely tell her that she was thinking too much. Chapter 400. She didn't know where this girl's confidence came from. She thought that as long as she hooked up with Mingxi, he would kneel under her skirt as if he had never seen a woman before. Zicheng was originally worried that Mingxi would say something. If others knew what she had done, it would definitely damage her reputation. She couldn't bear to see her good reputation being damaged in the slightest. She didn't expect that what she was worried about didn't happen. Whether it was Mingxi or Fengwu, neither of them said a word about what she had done on Bewitching Wind Island. They didn't even take the initiative to talk to her. This made Zicheng sigh in relief. At the same time, she was somewhat displeased. She wondered if the two of them were secretly looking down on her. If she had known that she would be discovered by Mingxi and the others, she wouldn't have touched the demon suppressing sword. Compared to the demon suppressing sword, her good reputation, which could bring her countless favorability points, was the thing she should cherish the most. "Senior, this is a sandwich made by Little Chung. It's delicious. I'll treat you to it." In order to hook up with Mingxi, Eve eagerly took out the sandwich Zicheng gave her. She wanted to increase her favorability with Mingxi. Unfortunately, Mingxi didn't accept her kindness. "No need, Junior Eve. I have food here. Food in the desert is precious. Junior should properly store this food." Although Mingxi didn't want to accept Eve's kindness, his words were still beautiful. He didn't let Eve feel his displeasure. She thought that Mingxi was really worried about her, and was afraid that she didn't have enough food. Eve, who thought that she was being treated differently, was delighted. She shyly said that she still had a lot of food. If Mingxi didn't have enough food on him, she could give some to Mingxi. Mingxi still refused. Of course, he refused in a very graceful manner. No one would think that he didn't like Eve. "Senior Mingxi, I still have a lot of food here. If you don't have enough, I can share some with you." Zicheng saw that Mingxi had learned to criticize her in front of so many people. She didn't hide from Mingxi anymore and spoke openly. It was just that she didn't greet Mingxi right from the start, which caused some people to have some guesses in their hearts. They probably guessed that the relationship between the two wasn't very good. Of course, no one said these words out loud. No need. I have enough food on me. Mingxi's expression was indifferent. His polite smile didn't change at all. No one could guess what he was thinking. Zicheng was a little disappointed that Mingxi didn't accept her kindness. Fortunately, she wasn't a pestering person. If Mingxi didn't accept, she wouldn't keep pestering him to accept her kindness. Little Cheng, is this your senior? Caesar noticed Mingxi as soon as he entered the cave. Mingxi's appearance was definitely not something that could be ignored. Although the people in this world valued strength more, who could say that appearance wasn't important? He was guessing which family's young master such a peerlessly handsome man was from, or which royal family's descendant. He didn't expect that this person was actually Zicheng and Eve's senior. This is our Notre Dame du Starlight's fifth-year chief Mingxi. Zicheng introduced her. Senior Mingxi, this is my friend Caesar. As for Caesar's true identity, she didn't say much. Mingxi still gave face to Zicheng and greeted Caesar in a friendly manner. The two of them didn't chat much, and just sat down to rest. On the other hand, Elena and the others chatted with Zicheng and the others. From Zicheng, they learned quite a lot about Mingxi. Of course, Zicheng also learned their names and how they met Mingxi. He even told them about the secrets of the tomb of the god of sin that he learned from Fengwu. Elena and the others weren't fools. They naturally had their own considerations for telling them this. If they wanted to leave this sand country's territory, the more people they could bring with them, the better. They had already guessed how dangerous the road ahead would be. It wouldn't be wrong to bring a few more people with them at this time. Telling them these things was like giving face to Zicheng and the others. After Caesar, Juanza, and the others found out about the tomb of the emperor, they were also shocked. They didn't think that the truth would be like this. They didn't think that this group of people would lie to them, because there was no need to. After knowing the secrets of the tomb of the emperor, Caesar and the others felt a little heavy. The development of the situation had exceeded their expectations. No one would have thought that the sea god would be such a vicious and merciless god. No matter what they thought, the alliance between the two groups could be considered to have been achieved. The snowstorm outside was still very strong, but it was very warm inside the cave. Fengwu took out a blanket from her spatial ring, then leaned against Mingxi and sat beside the fire. The warm blanket was draped over the two of them. Mingxi had wanted to refuse, but Fengwu's aggrieved and serious expression made it hard for him to say no. They leaned against each other for warmth. Mingxi could feel the warmth from Fengwu's body, and his heart softened. Elena, May, Irene, and Eve didn't feel good when they saw this scene. They wanted to squeeze their way over, but they couldn't bring themselves to do so. They could only watch and sulk. They even cursed Fengwu over 800 times in their hearts, cursing her for being shameless and seducing men. The night passed slowly with everyone having their own thoughts. The next day Mingxi and Fengwu woke up early in the morning. Because it was too hot, the two of them were almost woken up by the heat. Mingxi was a little surprised. He actually slept so soundly. He clearly knew how dangerous the environment was, but he actually fell asleep. Mingxi didn't dare to imagine. If someone had the intention to kill and steal, they might accidentally die in this place. If that happened, they wouldn't even have a place to cry. Fortunately, nothing happened last night. As he breathed a sigh of relief, he also made up his mind to not let the same thing happen again. The sun in the morning was relatively warm, only about 30 degrees. Everyone ate something and immediately set off to search for the ancient desert city mentioned in the notification. They walked in the desert. Fortunately, there were many smart people in this team, and they didn't go in the wrong direction. Following this direction, it shouldn't be a problem to find the ancient desert city. After walking in this endless desert for nearly 10 days, they still didn't see a building similar to a city. Although they found some oases, they were surrounded by evil spirits and were full of danger. Under Fengwu's suggestion, everyone didn't go near them. F***CK, how many days has it been? We still haven't found that damn ancient desert city. Where is it? We still can't find it after so long. Chapter 401. That's right. We don't have anything to eat anymore. If we can't find anything, we'll starve to death. This was a temporary team of about 7 people. They were all people who were teleported into the desert dungeon. Because they were on the same route, they formed a temporary alliance to search for the so-called ancient desert city together. There was not much food left for the 7 of them. After days of running around and the danger of food, these people looked a little haggard. Stop talking. There are people coming over there. Let's go and ask if they have anything to eat. If they do, we'll buy some first. Someone said excitedly when he saw people approaching from afar. Stop joking. Buy food. Do you think someone would be so stupid as to sell the food that they rely on to survive in the desert? I think it would be better for us to rob them directly. The 7 of us are all experts. There are also several women in their group who look weak at first glance. It won't be easy to rob them. This person sneered and said his thoughts aloud. These people thought about it and agreed. If there were real things, the possibility of them selling it to them was almost zero. Instead of wasting time talking about buying food, it was better to rob them. Therefore, this group of 7 men planned their first robbery since they worked together. Who would have thought that what they wanted to rob was not some amazing magical equipment, nor was it some divine weapon. It was just the most ordinary food. Ming-Shi and the others did not know that they had become fat sheep in the eyes of some people. Recently, although Ming-Shi and the others did not find any clues about the ancient desert city, they were not worried about food. This was because in their team, whether it was Fengwu or Zicheng, they were used to carrying a lot of food with them. Zicheng was in the food business, so it was not strange that he had so much food in his storage space. Fengwu was used to being fed by others because she was a foodie. She had more food than Zicheng. Just like that, the group that didn't have to worry about food met the group of 7 that was constantly worrying about whether they would starve to death. Stop, hand over your food. Not far in front of Ming-Shi, a large man wielding a saber suddenly appeared. This large man held a saber that was half the height of a person, and stood in front of Ming-Shi in an awe-inspiring manner. A gust of wind blew past, lifting up the man's long hair, revealing a haggard face covered in stubble. That's right. Hand over all your food. Hand over the food, and I won't kill you. One by one, 7 people dressed in non-mainstream clothing appeared, carrying all kinds of weapons. Some were wielding axes, some were wielding swords, some were wielding broadswords, some were wielding whips, and some were wielding ordinary magic swords. Of course, there were also those wielding magic staffs. The 7 of them stood in a row with different weapons in their hands. Their stomachs growled from time to time. Coupled with the sour smell that came from the fact that they hadn't bathed for a few days, their manly oily hair, and their completely shapeless clothes that seemed to be from the beggar clan. No matter how one looked at them, they didn't look like normal people. Ming-Shi and the others were speechless. Were these guys sent by monkeys to make fun of him? Who are you trying to rob when you're so hungry that you can't even walk? Although Elena sympathized with these guys, she didn't want to share her food with them. This was the desert. Without food, one would starve to death sooner or later. She didn't want to starve to death. There were quite a few people who had the same idea as her. No one said anything. No one wanted to help a bunch of idiots who they didn't know well at this time. 100 gold coins for a bag of food and 200 gold coins for a bag of water. If you want it, then trade. Just as Elena was thinking about how she couldn't give her food to these guys, the Fengwu girl stood up. Seeing these hungry guys and not sensing any killing intent from them, the Fengwu girl decided to sell them some food. Of course, the price was 100 times higher than outside. Okay. We'll buy it. We have money. The 7 idiots were so excited that they threw away their weapons. God knew that each of them only had 1 biscuit left. This was the food that was distributed to everyone at the beginning. At most, it could last them for 2 more days. Now that they couldn't find anything to eat, they could only starve to death. At this moment, the Fengwu girl, who sold them precious food, was as kind as a goddess. Although this goddess's price was a little expensive, they weren't afraid of the price. They were only afraid that they wouldn't be able to buy it. Originally, They wanted to steal a portion of the food to tide them over. They didn't want to kill anyone. They weren't murderers. They wouldn't kill anyone just to steal food. They didn't expect to be so lucky. The robbery had just begun, and there was already a kind person who was willing to sell them food. There were still many kind people in this world. They started to believe in love again. What does this have to do with love? The 7 men were afraid that the Fengwu girl would change her mind. They quickly took out their money to buy food. Fengwu girl had a lot of food and water. Her biggest hobby was collecting food. Although the food she collected wasn't too expensive, it was enough to keep them hungry. No, I don't agree with you selling food to them. This food belongs to our team. If you sell it to them, what about the rest of us? Irene May glared at Fengwu girl angrily. Her accusing eyes made it seem as if Fengwu girl had done something outrageous. The 7 men also glared at Irene May. Where did this stinky woman come from? Didn't she know that stealing food from a tiger's mouth would be punished? This is mine. Fengwu girl looked back at Irene May seriously. She refused to admit that her food was the shared property of the team. You're a member of our team. The food you have should be considered the shared property of all of us. You don't have the right to sell it. This strange theory made Fengwu girl blink her eyes. Fengwu girl looked at the self-righteous girl with a strange expression. Elena and the others behind May Irene girl looked uncomfortable. Although they didn't agree with Fengwu girl's method of selling food, they didn't have the face to say such a strange theory. There's something wrong with your brain. She stared at May Irene girl seriously for a long time before saying with a solemn expression, "Pfft." Many of them couldn't help but laugh, especially the 7 men who had almost lost their food when May Irene girl interrupted their transaction. The resentment of food was very scary. Ahaha. This is the first time I've heard such a strange theory in my life. I just found out that a team has to share everything with others. Chapter 402. Ahaha. This is the first time I've heard such a weird theory in my life. I just found out that a small team has to share everything with the others. Why doesn't she share her man with us? What kind of man can she have with that kind of character? She looks like a jinx to her husband. That's right. Ugly people are always mischievous. She really has a hole in her head. The 7 robbers laughed without restraint. Although the others wanted to laugh as well, they didn't laugh out loud to give Irene May some face. Only the 7 of them wouldn't give a girl any face. Irene May glared at the 7 of them with a venomous expression. She wished she could go up and kill them. If it weren't for her rationality, she might really have rushed up to them. What about us? Woman with a hole in her head. That's right. You have a hole in your head. Each one of them had a hole in their head. Fengwu May Irene May shouldn't have stopped you from making a deal with others, but she's doing it for everyone's sake. Without food, I'll starve to death here. Before you sell your food, can't you think for all of us? Although Eileen's voice was very gentle, and even had a hint of pleading, Fengwu May could tell that Eileen was on Irene May's side. Fengwu May blinked her big eyes, feeling wronged. These are my things. Why should I think for you? We're not friends. She didn't care if these words would offend others, she just said it. However, the Fengwu girl remembered that Mingxi was also here, so she changed her words. Senior Mingxi is a good friend. As she spoke, the girl's eyes had a hint of fawning, as if she was afraid that Mingxi would be angry with her. Mingxi was angry and amused at the same time. He rubbed her head to show that he wasn't angry. Fengwu breathed a sigh of relief and her mood soared. Among these people, the Fengwu girl only cared about Mingxi. Other than Mingxi, the others were just strangers to her. Oh, and Zicheng and Eve weren't strangers to her, but they were just ordinary classmates who were slightly better than strangers. Although Fengwu's words were not pleasant to hear, it was true. They just met by chance and were not really friends. Although this was something that everyone knew, no one would say it out loud. Of course, Fengwu girl was an exception. Fengwu girl's words left Elena speechless. She pulled May Irene, who was about to have a stroke, to the back of the crowd. She didn't care what Fengwu did with the food. Zicheng wanted to speak up for Elena and the others, but she was more afraid of angering Fengwu and causing her to spout nonsense. If that happened, it would be bad. So this time, Zicheng remained silent. Even when Eve wanted to help Elena and the others, she was stopped by Zicheng. She successfully traded some food to the 7 non-mainstream people. The 7 of them were just short of hugging her leg and calling her a goddess. Although Elena and the others weren't too happy, they didn't say anything. They didn't want to be attacked indiscriminately by Fengwu again. The 7 of them were much more confident after receiving food and water. They volunteered to join Fengwu's team and move with them. Thus, Fengwu's team grew stronger again. It was a good thing that the team grew stronger, but they still couldn't find any clues about the ancient desert city. "Baby, what do we do? We can't find it," Fengwu said listlessly. It was too hot during the day and too cold at night. Fengwu, who had always lived on Mount Yuehua, was very uncomfortable. "Don't worry. Let me take a look." Baby was also anxious. He hated this kind of hot place. Even lying on Fengwu's head to sleep, he was worried that he would be roasted when he woke up. Baby tried his best to use his power to predict the future, hoping to find the location of the ancient desert city. After Baby's hard work, she finally saw some scenes of the future. Sandstorms, quicksand whirlpools, underground cities, white bones. These images appeared in Baby's mind. Through these images, he roughly knew why everyone couldn't find the ancient desert city. The ancient desert city had been buried in the yellow sand tens of thousands of years ago. If one wanted to find it, they would have to rely on luck. Otherwise, no one would be able to dig a hole in the desert to find the buried city. Fengwu and the others, on the other hand, were all lucky. "Don't worry. You will find the place soon," Baby said confidently. "Oh." Fengwu nodded. She was quite happy. "Wait." At this time, the spirit of the emperor suddenly called out to Fengwu. "What's wrong?" Fengwu turned around. "I sense the Tsar's aura. He is nearby." The spirit of the emperor could sense each other. They didn't sense the spirit of the emperor, but the emperor's aura. Only the emperor's aura would have the emperor's aura. "Where is he?" Fengwu asked. Baby was amazing. He was so accurate. He found it immediately. Baby, confused, "No, this has nothing to do with me." The spirit of the emperor pointed in a direction, but it wasn't the direction they were going. Fengwu, of course, believed in the spirit of the emperor. She immediately walked over and pulled Mingxi's clothes. "The direction is wrong. We should go this way." Fengwu pointed with a serious face. "This way." Mingxi was a little surprised. This was the first time Fengwu pointed out a direction. In the past, when everyone discussed the direction, she didn't participate. Could it be that Fengwu found something? Mingxi, of course, believed in Fengwu. In his opinion, Fengwu could always bring about miracles. She was a girl who could bring about miracles. "Okay." Fengwu nodded. "Let's go this way." Mingxi thought for 2 seconds and directly announced the change of direction. "Wait, Senior Mingxi. Why do we have to listen to Fengwu?" Clearly, the direction of the discussion yesterday was not in this direction. Eve thought that she had to follow Fengwu's instructions again, and felt uncomfortable. This reminded her of the entrance exam. At that time, everyone also listened to Fengwu and looked down on her. That's right. Why should we listen to her? May Irene also stood out and pointed at Fengwu. "If you have any objections, you can go back the way you came," Mingxi said lightly, not taking the 2 girls' accusations to heart. May Irene and Eve looked at each other, and didn't dare to speak. They didn't like Fengwu, but they definitely didn't want to separate from Mingxi. Caesar and the others didn't have any objections to changing directions. After all, they couldn't find where the ancient desert city was after more than 10 days. Maybe they could find it by changing directions. No one came out to stop them. Everyone changed direction and continued to move forward. The spirit of the emperor led the way in front. Fengwu would occasionally ask everyone to turn around or something. It looked like she was the one leading the way. There was no other way. After all, everyone couldn't see the spirit of the emperor. Chapter 403. No one came out to stop them. Everyone changed direction and continued to move forward. The spirit of the emperor led the way in front. Fengwu would occasionally ask everyone to take a turn or something. It looked like she was the one leading the way. There was no other way. After all, no one could see the spirit of the emperor. They walked for half a day, and the sun was getting bigger and bigger. They had to find a place to hide from the sun, or their bodies might not be able to take it. They had been like this for the past 10 days. They hurried in the morning and found a place to rest in the afternoon and night. They didn't have much time to hurry, because the weather didn't allow it. Are we there yet? Bao Bao flew beside Feng Wu and asked listlessly. We should be there soon. My senses are getting stronger and stronger. We won't be too far away, the king's spirit said. Let's find a place to rest. The sun is too strong. We can't go any further. Zicheng wiped the sweat off his forehead. His forehead was covered in sweat. Little Cheng is right. It's too hot. I can't walk anymore. Eve drank a big mouthful of water. Her cheeks were red like a drunk person, as if she had a heat stroke. Let's go over there. There's a big tree over there. We can set up camp under it. Caesar felt bad for Zicheng, so he turned around and said to everyone. The others didn't have any objections, and agreed with Caesar. In this desert, green plants were not common, especially this kind of tree that was a few meters tall. He didn't know what kind of species this tree was, but from the fact that it could grow luxuriantly in the desert, it could be seen that this tree had a very strong vitality. Feng Wu still couldn't hear the sound of plants. Although she was a little disappointed, she still pulled herself together and set up the tents with everyone. Feng Wu sold the tents at a high price. After all, Feng Wu was the only one among them who could store such things in the space ring. The group of them set up tents under the big tree. Feng Wu and Ming Shi stayed together, while the others were assigned to their own tents. However, everyone stayed with the people they were familiar with and trusted. Of course, those who wanted to stay by themselves could also pay for their own tents. It was actually very stuffy to be cooped up in the tent on such a hot day. Fortunately, this was a magical world. Anything could be solved with magic, including lowering the temperature in the room. Only a small magic tool was needed to adjust the temperature of the room. Therefore, they wouldn't feel stuffy living in a tent. Instead, they could get a good rest. Xiao Wu, there's a lake in front. Do you want to take a bath with us? Feng Li's voice suddenly came from outside the tent. Feng Wu and Ming Shi walked out of the tent and saw Feng Li standing outside. Zicheng, Eve, Mei, Irene, and Elena were also there. There's a lake in front? Ming Shi was a little surprised. He didn't expect to be lucky enough to find a lake. Yes, there is. Little Cheng and I were just going to check out the terrain over there. We didn't expect to find a lake as soon as we crossed the sand dune. The lake isn't very big, but the water quality is pretty good. Eve answered Ming Shi happily. The news of Zicheng and the others finding a lake had attracted the attention of everyone in the temporary team. What they lacked the most in the desert was food. Now that they had found a drinkable water source, the first thing they wanted to do was to replenish their supplies. The girls, on the other hand, wanted to jump into the water and have a good bath. None of the men present objected to their desire to take a bath. However, everyone made a request. They had to wait until the water was ready. If they let them take a bath now, wouldn't they be drinking their own bath water in the future? Feng Wu also wanted to take a bath. Although people who practice magic and Doqi only needed to use these two types of energy to cleanse their bodies, and didn't need to bathe in water, it still felt weird to not bathe in water. Especially for Zicheng and Feng Wu, who were used to bathing in water since they were young. It felt weird not to bathe in water. One by one, the men took the empty water bags to the lakeside to fill them with water. The girls were already waiting by the lakeside, waiting for them to get the water, so that they could bathe together. Ming Shi and the others came to the lake to take a look. Sure enough, it was a clean lake. There didn't seem to be any problems with the water. After confirming that there was no problem with the lake water, the men moved quickly. They didn't let the girls wait for too long before they filled up all the water bags. After the men left, the girls took off their clothes one by one and jumped into the water. Although the sun was shining brightly outside, the water was still slightly cool. After jumping into the water, they felt great. I feel like I've finally come back to life. Elena happily enjoyed the slight coolness of the lake water. At this moment, she felt her whole body relax. Me too. I can finally take a good bath in the water. Although I've been using magic to cleanse my body every day for the past 2 days, I still feel sticky. I don't know if it's just my imagination. Heavens, my hands and neck are all tanned. Fengli cried out in surprise. She touched her tanned hands and wailed. I'm tanned too. Zicheng stared at his arms in distress. His skin exposed to the air was much darker than the skin under his clothes. It seemed that he would have to spend some time whitening his skin after leaving. Fengwu, you're not tanned at all. Fengli looked at Fengwu's hands in disbelief. The girls' necks, faces, and hands were all heavily sunburned. Although the degree of their skin was different, they were all tanned. Fengwu was the only one who didn't usually notice it. However, after taking a closer look, her skin didn't seem to have changed at all. Not to mention getting tanned, her skin wasn't even dehydrated. She looked exactly the same as usual. There was no difference at all. This was a perfect way to attract hatred. As a result, Fengwu immediately became the target of an interrogation. Everyone was very interested in the secrets of how she took care of her skin. There was no woman in the world who wasn't afraid of being old and ugly. No matter how strong a woman was, they were all interested in the secrets of beauty. Tell us, how did you take care of your skin? How did you take care of your skin so well? You didn't get tanned at all. Fengli usually didn't have any major conflicts with Fengwu. Unlike Eve, May, and Irene, she didn't find it difficult to ask directly. The two of them often caused trouble for Fengwu. Now that they were asked to ask Fengwu about her secret skincare, they knew without asking that Fengwu definitely wouldn't tell them. Fengwu, tell us about it. We're all very interested. Zicheng held Fengwu's hand and said with a natural smile. Fengwu blinked. What skincare? The Fengwu girls seriously lacked common knowledge when it came to things that girls knew. Chapter 404. What is maintenance? Can it be eaten? Stop pretending. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. It's just a secret maintenance recipe. What's so great about it? Eve saw that Fengwu did not give Zicheng any face at all. Zicheng had condescended to ask her, and she still dared to pretend that she did not understand. She was indeed *TCH. She was not even willing to share a single maintenance recipe. Eve was not the only one who was dissatisfied with Fengwu. Because of Mingxi, Elena and Mei Irene were also hostile towards Fengwu. It was just that one of them did not show it, while the other showed it on their faces. That's right. Stop pretending. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. It's as if someone wants to take your recipe for free. Mei Irene also looked at Fengwu with disdain, as if she was really a stingy and selfish woman. Mei Irene had never thought that she would take Fengwu's recipe for free. She did not plan to pay any price at all. All right, Mei Irene. Fengwu is probably not saying it because this recipe is related to her family's business. Let's not force Fengwu. How about this? Fengwu, how many maintenance products do you have? We'll all buy them from you. What do you think? Elena had always been very rational and considerate in order to show others that she was considerate in front of others. Even in front of the annoying Fengwu, she still had to maintain her demeanor. Mei Irene saw this and sneered in her heart. Pretending? Who doesn't know your true colors? However, she continued to agree. All right, Fengwu. This time, you can't say that you don't have any more. I don't know what you're talking about. Fengwu shook her head and threw a confused look at them. Fengwu couldn't be blamed for this. This girl had never bought those expensive skincare products in her entire life. How could a girl like Fengwu, who had never taken care of herself, share her sunscreen skincare experience with others? All the girls were a little angry. Fengwu, what do you mean? We already said that we will give you money. Are you still worried that we won't give you money? Eve glared at Fengwu. That's right. What's the meaning of this? Do you not want to sell it to us? Mei Irene said angrily. Zicheng and Elena didn't look too happy either. However, both of them were people who cared about their image. If someone didn't want to sell it to them, they couldn't force them to. The two of them would never do something that would lower their status and ruin their image. As for Fengli, although she was disappointed, she wasn't angry. However, Fengwu's act of playing dumb still made Fengli choose to watch coldly from the sidelines. She didn't help Fengwu. In the end, she was still a little angry. In fact, they had wronged Fengwu girl. When she said that she didn't know, she wasn't pretending. She really didn't know. Logically speaking, it was normal to get tanned under the sun every day. It would be abnormal if she didn't get tanned. However, Fengwu had a cute pet called White Lotus. White Lotus had its own cooling and anti-ultraviolet radiation properties. She wore White Lotus on her wrist every day like a bracelet, so it was normal that she didn't get tanned. However, these girls didn't know this and thought that Fengwu had secretly used some miraculous sunscreen skincare products. Because of the skincare products, Fengwu's narrow-mindedness had angered everyone. Unknowingly, Fengwu was isolated. Fortunately, Fengwu wasn't a girl with a fragile heart. She wouldn't hide and cry because she was isolated by the girls. The girls who were talking about the skincare products just now didn't notice that there was a large dark cloud in the distance that was quickly approaching. Everyone, come over here. Something bad has happened. The girls who were playing in the water heard someone shout. They immediately took out clean clothes and changed into them before running over as fast as they could. The person who shouted was one of the 7 young men. He was sweating profusely as he looked at Fengwu and the others running over. Quick, let's go. Something bad has happened. As soon as the young man finished speaking, he immediately called out to Fengwu and ran. It really looked like something urgent had happened. Zicheng and the others' hearts tightened. They followed the young man and ran to the campsite where they had set up camp. When the girls noticed the campsite, they realized that the tents had been put away. The men's expressions were a little strange. It's good that we got them back. Everyone, let's get out of here. Mingxi stepped forward, grabbed Wu's hand, and ran quickly in a direction. Caesar also pulled Zicheng and strode after them. What happened? Elena asked in confusion as she followed the few men she was familiar with. Don't mention it. There's a sandstorm coming soon. We have to get out of here quickly. The one who answered her question was Olifman. Sandstorm. Elena, May and Irene were all shocked, but they immediately sped up. After knowing what kind of danger awaited them, no one dared to stop. If they didn't leave quickly and find a place to hide, they were afraid that they would be buried alive by the sandstorm. Huff huff. Everyone panted and ran forward with all their might. It's in this direction. I feel like we're getting closer and closer. The spirit of the emperor led thousands of spirits behind Fengwu and ran together. It's true. Bao Bao was overjoyed. Great, we're finally here. Senior Mingxi, it's right in front. Fengwu immediately told this good news to Mingxi. Mingxi was stunned. He didn't ask why Fengwu knew this. He only nodded to show that he understood. Mingxi and Fengwu sped up at the same time, and the others immediately followed. At this time, they could see a large patch of dark clouds and sandstorm moving forward quickly behind them. If Mingxi and the others couldn't find a place to hide, they might be in danger. They flipped over a sand dune, and just as they were sliding down the dune, they didn't expect to see a quicksand whirlpool. Fengwu and the others only had time to scream. They didn't even have time to escape before they were sucked into the quicksand whirlpool. Plop. The sound of water dripping could be heard from time to time. Fengwu opened her eyes, but found that there was no light around her. She summoned a magic prop for illumination, and soon Fengwu's surroundings were lit up. Bones, endless bones. Fengwu found that she was lying on a piece of white, and not far from Fengwu, there was a group of people. These people were the temporary team members who fell down with her. At this time, Mingxi also woke up. He looked at the surrounding environment, and the first thing he wanted to do was to find Fengwu. Finding that Fengwu was fine and woke up like him, Mingxi was secretly relieved. Let's wake everyone up first, Mingxi said. Fengwu nodded, and the two went to wake up the people who fell down one by one. Zicheng was the third to wake up, and Caesar was the fourth. These two, as the original male and female lead, didn't need others to wake them up. They could wake up by themselves. Chapter 405. Juanza also felt someone slapping his face. He had been woken up by the slap, and the first person he saw after waking up was Fengwu. He had many questions to ask, but before he could ask, Fengwu had already used the same method to wake up the other unconscious girls. What is this place? How did we get here? Heavens! So many bones! I want to leave this place. I don't want to stay here. May Irene screamed in fear. I don't want to stay here either. This place is too scary. I want to leave. Eve was so scared that she was about to cry. Thinking about how she had been unconscious in a pile of bones, and how she was now stepping on bones, she felt terrible. This is the ancient desert city. Amidst the panicked screams, Fengwu's calm voice was very attention-grabbing, and at the same time calming. The ancient desert city. This is the ancient desert city. Everyone was shocked. No one had expected the legendary ancient desert city to be a place piled with bones. What do we do now, little Chung? Are we going to leave this place? Eve scowled miserably, looking listless. Deep in her eyes, one could see the obvious fear. No, if this is really the ancient desert city, we can't leave, Zicheng said, forcing herself to be calm. No matter how great a cheat Zicheng had gotten, it couldn't change the fact that she was just a girl from a civilized world who had never seen so many bones before. No matter how calm Zicheng appeared, it was impossible for her not to feel anything. However, Zicheng was the original female lead after all. She adjusted her state of mind very well, and quickly regained her composure. The others, on the other hand, found it difficult to calm down. They were all very agitated, especially the girls. That's right, it wasn't easy to find the ancient desert city. There's no reason for us to leave. Caesar's eyes darkened, and a trace of determination flashed across them. Eve didn't say anything else, but she was still scared. She could only hold Zicheng's hand tightly, hoping that Zicheng would give her some courage. Zicheng patted her hand to comfort her, but his eyes were looking around. So many people had died here, it was definitely not a good place. What was the purpose of letting them come here? At this moment, in this underground city, a row of white mist-like words suddenly appeared out of thin air. Welcome to the second stage. Please find the exit in the ancient desert city and leave this place. Find the exit and leave. If that's the case, then it is indeed this place. This was good news for everyone. At the same time, it also indicated that more danger was gradually approaching them. Strange, there are only bones here, but there is no killing intent. This shouldn't be. Bao Bao looked at the bones in confusion. Logically speaking, this place should have accumulated a large amount of baleful aura. Unexpectedly, there was not even a little bit of baleful aura. It was simply unbelievably clean. Bao Bao wouldn't think that this was a good place just because there wasn't any killing intent. On the contrary, the lack of killing intent was the biggest problem. The danger level of this Sand Emperor's tomb was definitely higher than the first tomb Fengwu had gone to. Senior Mingxi, what are you looking at? Eve was very scared at first. She inadvertently turned her head and glanced over, only to see Mingxi squatting down to look at the bones. Her heart skipped a beat and she couldn't help but ask. Mingxi looked up at her and replied calmly, I'm observing their cause of death. These people died very strangely. Strangely? Mingxi, did you discover something? Juanza also leaned over curiously. Most of the men leaned over to see what Mingxi had discovered. The girls were still a little scared. Other than Fengwu, Zicheng, and Fangli, no other girls dared to lean over. Look at these bones. Do you see anything wrong with these bones? Mingxi asked without turning his head. Problem? Juanza also grabbed a bone to take a look. There was nothing wrong. He looked at the bones again, from head to toe. Gradually, he realized that something was wrong. These bones don't have any scars. This way of death is too strange. Juanza also looked at the bones with a grave expression. What? No scars? Then how did they die? Did they all die from the plague? No, they might have been poisoned. The group started to make guesses about how these bones died. But no matter how they guessed, they didn't know if they were right. Let's leave this place first. There's a city gate in front. Let's go in first. Mingxi pointed at the majestic city wall in front of them. The city wall was very tall, about a few dozen meters tall. Behind that huge wall should be the legendary ancient desert city. Above the city gate, there were indeed the words Ancient Desert City carved on it. No one had any objections to entering the ancient desert city. They all walked forward. They all knew that if they wanted to leave, they would have to enter the ancient desert city to find clues. Mingxi held Fengwu's hand and walked in front as usual. The spirit of the emperor kept looking in the direction of the city gate with an ugly expression. I didn't expect that he would be willing to use such a method to obtain eternal life. The spirit of the emperor muttered to himself. Fengwu didn't notice what he said. When they reached the city gate, they realized that there were a few people there. These people had obviously come earlier than them, but they didn't enter. It was obvious that something had happened. More people are here. This is great. Everyone is trapped in this godforsaken place. A middle-aged man said with a smile. Sigh. A young man sighed, but his expression was numb. The others didn't say anything. They just looked at them strangely. You guys are also here to look for the ancient desert city. Why don't you go in? Sherrod asked curiously. Sigh, how do you know that we didn't go in? It's because we went in that nearly half of the people died. The people in front of you now are just survivors who just escaped from the city. The middle-aged man said listlessly. You guys have entered the city. Is it very dangerous in the city? What is it like in the city? Are there many monsters attacking you? Hurry up and tell us. The more we know, the higher the chances of everyone passing together. These people talked one after another, trying to get more information from the middle-aged man. Big brother, can you tell us what happened in the city? Mingxi asked on behalf of everyone. Everyone looked at the man expectantly. 2 days ago, our temporary team and I were the first batch of people to arrive here. After we arrived, we immediately entered this ancient desert city. There was clearly no one in the city, but we felt like we were being watched by countless people. Later, people started to go missing. The missing people couldn't even find their bodies. We were afraid that there was something strange in the city, so we left the city. We didn't expect something even more terrifying to happen at this time. Chapter 406. Although this person explained, Mingxi and the others finally understood what had happened. Just 2 days ago, the middle-aged man and the others came to the ancient desert city. Although they felt that this place was not a good place, in order to pass the second test, they had to enter the city. There were only a bunch of buildings in the city, and these buildings were very well preserved. There was no dust in the city at all. It did not look like a city that had disappeared for 10,000 years. The middle-aged man and the others split up in the city to find a way to leave, but something strange happened. Some of them began to disappear. Not only could they not find the bodies of the missing people, but they also could not find any traces of fighting. The disappearance of those people was very strange. There were no clues at all. The middle-aged man and the others didn't dare to split up. The group gathered together, but they still felt that their movements were being watched. As experts with considerable strength in the outside world, they actually couldn't find out where the person who was watching them was. To ensure everyone's safety, the group retreated from the city gate. After leaving the city, the feeling of being watched finally disappeared. Just as they breathed a sigh of relief, something even more unbelievable happened. Outside the city, in the open space where the bones were piled up like a mountain, a red light suddenly appeared. With the appearance of the red light, the bones underground seemed to come alive. Their bodies began to emit an endless murderous aura. If one could hear the sound of fighting on the battlefield, the messy human bones began to condense into complete white bones. These skeletons were all holding swords and sabers. Their pupilless eyes emitted 2 rays of red light. Under the horrified gazes of the people, all the skeletons unhesitatingly rushed towards the people standing outside the city gate with their weapons. The middle-aged men were shocked and panicked. There were so many white bones that they could not deal with. The middle-aged man and the others had no choice but to return to the ancient desert city. The moment they returned, the feeling of being watched appeared again. Some people began to disappear. Some people had clearly seen people next to them a second ago, but in the blink of an eye, they were gone. No one knew how they disappeared. They had no choice. When they could not stay in the city, they had to leave again. Fortunately, these white bones would only change when the red light appeared. Usually, they were just ordinary white bones. After 2 days, the group of middle-aged men went from 12 people to 6 people. In just 2 days, this group of men was about to have a mental breakdown. Red light? Did you see what was emitting that light? Mingxi felt that the red lights were not simple, but he could not figure out what they were. He hoped that he could get some useful information from the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man shook his head. He didn't see much and didn't know where the red light came from. I remember that when the red light appeared, I vaguely saw a blood moon appear right above those white bones. A young man beside him said with uncertainty, "Blood moon." Mingxi and the others stared at the man in disbelief. The blood moon was recorded in some books in Heavenly Wind Continent. The blood moon was not a real moon. It was just a moon-like object formed by a trace of the essence of the moon and a baleful aura. The blood moon would only appear in places with extreme yin qi. Wherever the blood moon appeared, it would definitely be an extremely dangerous place. If one entered such a dangerous place, they would definitely die. Moreover, due to the existence of the blood moon, it was extremely easy for demonic creatures to breed in these places. Moreover, the level of the demonic creatures produced in the blood moon was not low. It was because they thought of this that they were so shocked when they heard the young man's words. Blood moon. Are you sure it's the blood moon? The middle-aged man grabbed the young man's clothes agitatedly, his expression extremely terrified. The young man nodded his head vigorously, confirming that he had not seen wrongly. Why didn't you say so earlier? The middle-aged man grabbed the young man's clothes in shock and anger. I just didn't want everyone to be more afraid. The young man complained for himself, feeling wronged. He just didn't want the already frightened birds to be more frightened. The middle-aged man let go dejectedly, knowing that the young man's words were reasonable. If they had let others know about the blood moon in that kind of situation, the survivors would have lost even more courage and hope to live. Not good. Red light. Suddenly, someone in the middle-aged man's group shouted in panic. The middle-aged man and others reacted very quickly. As soon as the man shouted, they opened the door and rushed in. Mingxi and others looked back. It was indeed the mysterious red light that the middle-aged man had said. Mingxi also saw that the young man was probably not lying. There was indeed a blood moon in the sky. The blood moon would regularly release evil qi to control these bones. This was also the reason why Fengwu did not see any evil qi at all. Because the evil qi had been absorbed by the blood moon, of course, she could not see any evil qi. Let's go. Mingxi led everyone into the city. With the closing of the city gate, the bone soldiers who had climbed out of the pile of bones disappeared from everyone's eyes. Everyone leaned against the city gate, and finally breathed a big sigh of relief. The people who were glad to have escaped a disaster did not find that from the moment they came in. Fengwu's eyes had changed. In the eyes of others, the city was an empty space, but in Fengwu's eyes, it was a sea of people. A lot of spirits looked at them coldly in front of them, and what was even more terrible was that all the spirits here looked exactly the same. Yes, all the spirits in the desert city had the same face. This was simply impossible, but it still happened, and it happened in front of Fengwu's eyes. She could not believe it even if she did not want to. Who are you? Fengwu looked at these people quietly, her eyes full of doubts. Why were there so many people who looked exactly the same looking at them? Fengwu was very puzzled. She could not understand why she chose to directly look at those people. She did not feel any resentment from these people, nor did she feel any evil qi or unwillingness. This was very wrong. There was no unwillingness, evil qi, or resentment. It showed that they were worried when they died. It was impossible for a free spirit to stay in the world for a long time if they did not have a contract with the necromancer. They would be sent to reincarnation by the rules of the earth. But these spirits in front of her, each of them seemed to have no problem at all, but they did not reincarnate. This was what Fengwu could not figure out the most. Who are you talking to? Mei Irene had just breathed a sigh of relief when she saw Fengwu staring at the empty street and talking to herself. It was a little scary. Chapter 407. Xiaowu. Mingxi held Fengwu's hand and looked ahead worriedly. There are so many people here, so many identical people. Fengwu turned back and said seriously to Mingxi, While Feng Wu and Ming Shi were talking, these identical spiritual bodies all had a ferocious look on their faces. Even the ferocious look on their faces was exactly the same. These strange spirits had no intention of answering Feng Wu's question, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. You're saying there are evil spirits here? Under the crimson moon, it was simply too normal to breed evil spirits. This was also why Ming Shi made such a guess. No, they're not evil spirits. They have nothing on them. Feng Wu shook her head and denied Ming Shi's guess. They're not evil spirits. Ming Shi wanted to ask Feng Wu what exactly those things were, but the place they were in now was a bit dangerous. It really wasn't a good place to ask. You're saying there are undead moving around here. Could it be that this is actually a ghost town? Ghost town, this name is really appropriate, Bao Bao thought. Eve, who was speaking, was shocked by her own guess and broke out in a cold sweat. People were afraid of the unknown. Undead were exactly what ordinary people were afraid of. Apart from necromancers, no one would particularly want to see spirits. Little girl, you're a necromancer. The middle-aged man who escaped first looked at Feng Wu with shining eyes. In their group, there were pharmacists, mages and sword masters, but there was no necromancer. The middle-aged man thought about how he felt that he was being watched as soon as he entered the city. He didn't doubt that Feng Wu had revealed the information. It turned out that they were being watched by a group of undead. No wonder every time they came in they felt strange all over. No, I can just see some things. Feng Wu didn't lie. Although she had the qualifications to become a necromancer, she never thought of becoming one. She preferred swords. It's good that you can see. It's good that you can see. Can you tell us what you saw just now? The middle-aged man asked sincerely. Feng Wu didn't feel that there was anything to hide, so she told them what she saw just now. At this time, beside Feng Wu and behind the spirit of the emperor, the spirits began to gossip about what they had just discovered. It seems that the legend is true. I didn't expect the Tsar to be such a cruel person. That's why people say you can't judge a book by its cover. Tsar looks like a dog, but his actions are basically inhumane. For the sake of one person, everyone is implicated. This is too much. The Tsar is famous for being a pervert. He would do something like this. This is really something that he would do. These spirits started gossiping about the Tsar. What's going on? Do you know something? When Bao Bao flew over from Feng Wu's side, he happened to hear these spirits talking. He went over curiously. These spirits didn't hide anything and immediately told Bao Bao everything about the Tsar. Bao Bao pouted after hearing that. He didn't approve or disapprove of the Tsar's character. I originally thought that the books were just stories made up by others. I didn't expect it to be true. Ming Shi took a deep breath and said, Do you know something about Ming Shi? Juanzi also looked at Ming Shi. Other than Juanzi, everyone also looked in Ming Shi's direction, hoping that he could explain. Ming Shi coughed lightly. If I didn't guess wrongly, those spirits that Xiao Wu saw should be citizens of the Sand Country, Ming Shi said. So the people of the Sand Country all look exactly the same? This was too unbelievable. In a world, it wasn't easy to find two people who had the same height, weight, and disposition. Moreover, everyone in the Sand Country looked the same, had the same expression, the same actions, and the same disposition. If they were told that they were born this way, no matter what, they wouldn't believe it. Of course that's impossible. The reason why they turned out this way was because of a legend. Ming Shi then shared some of the things he knew. 10,000 years ago, before the Sand Country was unified, most of the people living in this desert were ordinary humans. Bandits ran rampant in the desert, and the people living in the desert were often in dire straits. One day, a person from the demon realm came to this desert for some reason. That person from the demon realm was just a small soldier in the demon realm, but he was an existence that these people couldn't surpass. His arrival made the lives of the people here even harder. Not only did the demon realm request these people to offer good wine as a tribute, but they also wanted to offer beauties. Therefore, the people back then had no choice but to offer up the food that they didn't have much to begin with as a tribute. They also offered up the most beautiful women in the vicinity. The demon realm was brutal by nature, and would kill humans at the drop of a hat. The people were filled with resentment, but they were unable to go against this demon realm. Later on, One of the beauties offered as a tribute got pregnant. After being pregnant for 10 months, this woman's life force was sucked dry by the baby in her womb. She then broke out of her womb and came to this world. Originally, with that demon realm member around, these humans didn't dare to hurt that child. It was a pity that the demon realm member was killed by an expert who passed by one day. That expert only killed the demon realm member and didn't care about that half-human, half-demon child. That child was adopted by the elder brother of the dead woman. That man didn't think that he wanted to take good care of the child as he grew up. You'd be sorely mistaken if you thought that way. The man only wanted to torture this child, making him pay the price for the death of his younger sister whom he loved dearly. This price should have been paid by that demon realm member. However, since the demon realm member had died, the man naturally wanted to take revenge on the demon realm's descendant. From then on, the man began to abuse that child every day. The child, who didn't know anything, was abused until he was covered in wounds. However, no one was willing to provide help to this child. The people in the vicinity looked at the child as if they were looking at a dirty object, an object that was used for them to take revenge on. The child began to hate everyone. Of course, the person he hated the most was still the man who he should have called uncle. The boy grew up. He had demon realm blood in his body. After awakening his bloodline, his cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. Finally, the boy defeated the uncle who had adopted him and killed him in an extremely cruel way. As for those who didn't lend him a helping hand, they were cursed by the power of the demon realm and would forever take on the appearance of his uncle. These people would have to face this face every day just like him, and would never be able to regain their original appearance. Later on, the Sand Country was established. The citizens inside all took on the appearance of the Sand Emperor's uncle, and would never be able to change back. Regardless of whether it was a man or a woman, it was the same. The citizens couldn't even commit suicide, and could only be imprisoned in this ancient desert city by the Sand Emperor forever. Chapter 408. Those who were imprisoned became the targets of the Tsar. Every time the Tsar was in a bad mood, he would randomly pick a person who had the same terrifying face as his uncle to vent his anger on. He would torture that person in all sorts of ways, and after he was tortured to death, he would call another person in to continue torturing him until he was completely frustrated. This was the Tsar's favorite game. Regarding this game, the people who supported the Tsar at that time jokingly called it the Tsar's game. After hearing what Mingxi said, everyone had different expressions. For a moment, no one knew what they were thinking. So, the Tsar is actually a half-human, half-demon. May Irene said softly. Exactly the same face. This Tsar is indeed a half-demon, half-human. He's a ruthless person. Luchin did not have much of an impression of the Tsar. In the past, he did not even know who the Tsar was. However, during these few days, he had learned a lot about the Tsar. As his understanding deepened, he did not have a good impression of the Tsar at all. The people here are also pitiful to have met such a master, Eve said calmly. Could it be that the reason why those people who came in first disappeared was because of them? Caesar could not help but guess. He was a person with a firm mind. No matter how sympathetic the people of the Sand Country were, he would not feel anything special. That's very possible, Juanza agreed. Everyone be careful. The city is filled with the spirits of the dead people of the Sand Country. No one knows what they can do, Chakri said. That's right. Everyone be careful. So it's all because of those spirits of the dead. So many people have disappeared. I wonder if those people have already been killed. The middle-aged man sighed. His expression was that of realization. Knowing that they were surrounded by dead spirits of the dead, everyone felt a little uncomfortable. Their every move was under the eyes of these spirits of the dead. No one would feel comfortable. Let's go in and take a look. If we want to leave this place, we still have to find a way out, Zicheng said. Everyone nodded and agreed with Zicheng's idea. The group walked on the street, but there was no one on the street. The city was dead silent. If they didn't know in advance that there were many undead in the city, no one would have thought that there would be other things here. Xiao Wu, since you can see the undead, can you communicate with them? Maybe they will know where the exit is. Zicheng turned around and looked at Fengwu. Zicheng's words reminded everyone that Fengwu's ability to communicate with the undead was indeed very useful in this place. If used well, it could save them a lot of effort. I'll try. Fengwu didn't refuse and agreed without thinking. She walked in a certain direction and said a few words to the air. In less than 2 minutes, she came back. How is it? What did those people say? Did they promise to take us to find the exit? Fengwu shook her head. They ignored me, and they were very strange. They didn't talk at all. It was also the first time that Fengwu had encountered such undead that she couldn't communicate with at all. Everyone was very disappointed with this answer, but they also knew that they couldn't blame her for this matter. They all expressed their understanding and told her not to take it to heart. The ancient desert city was very big. They walked all the way, but they didn't encounter the kind of people that the middle-aged man said would suddenly disappear. However, everyone didn't dare to be careless. They didn't stay in the houses in the city. Their only goal was the palace. Everyone felt that if there was a way out, then the way out must be in the palace. The palace was the largest and most luxurious building in the city. Fengwu and her party passed through the unguarded gate and directly entered the building that represented the supreme imperial power in the city. The palace was built very large, and the scenery inside was very beautiful. The garden was very beautiful, and the flowers were very rare in the desert. Through the garden, they entered the hall. The hall was magnificent, and the walls were inlaid with night pearls for illumination. In the center of the hall was a throne inlaid with gems. Just taking this throne out and selling it was enough for ordinary people to spend for several lifetimes. Although the throne was very attractive, no one touched it or had the idea of moving it away. This place was not a good place. Any small mistake could cause a big crisis. No one was a fool who would touch the throne that symbolized imperial power at this time. Let's split up and see if we can find any clues, Mingxi said. The palace was too big. If so many of them walked together, it would be bad for them to find a way out. It was better to look for it separately. That's good. Let's meet in the hall in half an hour. Caesar nodded in agreement. Out of confidence in his own strength, he was not afraid of the danger that they might encounter if they acted separately. The others did not have any objections. Everyone formed their own teams and then divided the area that they needed to look for, and then set off to find a way out. Fengwu, of course, was still with Mingxi. Mingxi was not at ease letting Fengwu form a team alone. This girl was too naive. He was afraid that she would be cheated and help others count the money. This man is not bad. Xiaowu's taste is not bad. Mingxi's appearance was still very good for him. Some of the little maids liked this kind of good-looking man very much. The spirits of these maids drooled all the way to Mingxi. Fortunately, Mingxi did not know. Otherwise, who knew how angry he would be? Half an hour later, everyone gathered back. There was no suspected teleportation point in the entire palace. Lu Chun and Feng Li were lucky. They found a notebook in a little maid's room. Some things were recorded in this notebook. Everyone gathered together and listened to Lu Chun read out the things that the little maid had recorded, hoping to find some clues to leave. Today my appearance changed again. My face is becoming more and more like the people here. I don't know how long I can stay awake. Perhaps it won't be long before I become like the others. I will no longer remember who I am and become exactly like the others. More people have entered this city. They will gradually become the same as me. Looking at them desperately trying to escape, it really is like looking at myself when I first came to this place. It's useless. No one can leave this place, not even if they die. Today I heard big news. Our king has been killed. Will this be a relief for us? Without the king's curse, will we be able to return to how we were before? The king is really dead. Everyone will become sacrifices to be buried with him. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Chapter 409. The diary only reached this far, and it only recorded a few days of information. It could be seen that the person who recorded these things had not been in the palace for a long time, so she could only write down these things. From these words, they could infer one thing. And that was that the people who came to this country would become like the uncle that the other Tsar hated the most. Not only would their appearance change, but even their thoughts would change. Perhaps when they completely changed into another person, their previous memories would also disappear. This might be no different from death. We only found this, and we don't know where the exit is at all. Eve said, a little discouraged. The others were not in a good mood either. Did anyone look carefully? I remember that many palaces have secret rooms. Perhaps the exit is in the secret room. Zicheng pondered for a moment before saying, I looked very carefully. I almost dug up the floor. I did find a few secret rooms, but there was no exit. Olafman said, because it was related to whether or not they could leave this place. It was impossible for anyone not to search with all their might. Zicheng was not the only one who could think of the secret passage here. Everyone was not stupid, and among this group of people, there were also people from big families who were familiar with secret rooms and secret passages. It was impossible for them to miss it. They could not find it anywhere. Could it be that the exit was not in the palace, but somewhere else? This was not impossible, but if it was not in the palace, then the range was huge. It would take a lot of time to search the whole city. However, this ancient desert city was full of strange things. It was very unwise to stay in such a place for a long time. The worst thing was that they had no other choice. Wait, there is a place we haven't looked yet. Mingxi suddenly said. That's right. There is a place we haven't looked for. Caesar's reaction was not slow. He quickly knew what Mingxi was talking about. The garden. The two of them said the answer in unison. They had searched all the rooms in the palace, including the servants' room and the kitchen, but only the garden had not been searched. Everyone suddenly realized, but it was true. They had not searched the garden yet. Everyone rushed towards the garden. At this time, the spirit of the emperor and the others spoke. Xiao Wu, there is a spirit in the corner up ahead who has been watching you. I just sent someone to contact her. She said that she has something to say to you and wants you to find her alone. The spirit of the emperor stood beside Fengwu and said. Fengwu thought about it and agreed. She glanced at the team in front of her who was rushing to the garden to search. Fengwu didn't tell Mingxi. She followed the spirit of the emperor and the others to find the spiritual body they were talking about. It was Fengwu's first time seeing such an incomplete spirit. This face looked very much like the face of the Tsar's legendary uncle, but it was not completely the same. Her facial transformation was obviously only half complete, but because it was only half complete, it made her look very strange. Her face was half yin and half yang, half like a woman and half like a man. Even the color of her hair was half yin and half yang. Her appearance was enough to scare people to death. Fengwu was not scared. She was just a little surprised. You're here. You can see us, right? I heard them say that there was someone who could see us. I didn't really believe it. I didn't expect you to be able to see us. The strange woman cried like a pear blossom in the rain. The scene that should have looked pitiful was like a scene in a horror movie because of her crying. Don't cry. Fengwu stared at her seriously. She didn't like people crying in front of her. Master also said that nothing could be solved by crying. Crying was just a way to escape, and the strong would never escape. Fengwu, who had been determined to become a strong person since she was young, never liked children who cried. Who are you? Why are you completely different from them? Bao Bao curiously flew around her in a circle, his little mouth opening and closing. My name is Xiaoqi. I was originally an ordinary girl. My family has lived in the desert oasis for generations. It wasn't until the Tsar unified the desert and built the ancient desert city that I thought of coming to the ancient desert city to find work. I didn't expect this place to be completely different from what I imagined. Until I died, I didn't get to go out and see my parents again. Xiaoqi thought of the sad part and cried even more sadly. Fengwu was not a person who was good at comforting people. She could only tell her not to cry, but this strange-looking girl seemed to be possessed by the crying god. She would cry easily. Fengwu stared. She liked to cry so much. She must be weak. Why do you look different from the people outside? Bao Bao was most curious about this. You can see us, so you must know that we all look the same. About the king's curse, do you know? The woman asked carefully. I know a little. Fengwu told her the story she heard from Mingxi. What you know is not everything. There is one thing wrong. The woman shook her head sadly. What's wrong? Bao Bao asked curiously. It's not us who are cursed. It's this city. Once you enter this city, you will slowly become like that person. The king has trapped all of us here. Before the transformation is complete, no one is allowed to leave. The woman sobbed. You mean, anyone who enters this city will become like that person, including Xiao Wu and the others? Bao Bao's face changed and his eyes widened. The woman nodded timidly. Yes, including you. The only way to change is to kill the person who created this curse, which is our king. You want us to help you kill the Tsar. At this time, White Lotus spoke. It turned into a small snake and climbed onto Fengwu's shoulder. Its vertical eyes stared coldly at the spiritual body of the woman in front of it. Yes. Please help us. We have no other choice. If we don't kill the Tsar, all of us will be imprisoned here forever. We won't be able to go anywhere, and we'll only be able to wear this face forever. The woman pleaded softly. Tiethe, you haven't said why you are different from the others. Don't talk nonsense here. White Lotus glared at her coldly and successfully made her swallow her next cry. The reason why I'm different from them is because I wasn't completely changed when I died. At that time, the king suddenly passed away, and the two most loyal lords by the king's side sealed all of us in the ancient desert city, never to leave. We all became funerary objects and were locked in this place forever. At that time, my transformation was only half complete, so I have always been like this. Chapter 410. Is there no one else like you? Bao Bao suddenly asked. No, what's wrong? The woman looked at Bao Bao in confusion. Bao Bao didn't say anything, but there was a hint of sneer in his drooping eyes. The woman told some of her bad experiences. Because her appearance was different from others, she was rejected by other spirits. She was often bullied here, and her days were very hard. She desperately hoped that someone could save them who had been harmed by the Tsar. The woman was very pitiful. She died miserably when she was alive, and she could not rest in peace after death. Fengwu promised to take her to see the others, so that they could find a way to kill the Tsar and save all the undead. At this time, the people who were constantly looking for a way out of the back garden also found that Fengwu was missing. The first to discover it was, of course, Mingxi. Mingxi never thought that the obedient Fengwu girl would run away by herself. When he found that she was missing, he thought that something had happened to her. He was so anxious that he organized everyone to look for her. He himself was so anxious that he frowned deeply. He rushed into the hall and began to shout Fengwu's name. Xiaowu, Xiaowu. Mingxi shouted Fengwu's name loudly. The same was true for other people. The voice of Fengwu could be heard everywhere in the palace. Are you looking for me? Fengwu did not know how worried Mingxi was because she sneaked away without saying a word. Mingxi blamed himself. Because of his negligence, something happened to Fengwu. He would never forgive himself for the rest of his life. As soon as Fengwu made a sound, Mingxi rushed up with a look of surprise, hugged her into his arms, and checked her again and again to make sure that she was all right. Only then did he feel relieved. Where have you been? How can you run around? Mingxi was worried and angry at the same time. This was the first time he spoke to Fengwu in such a serious tone. Fengwu blinked and felt a little wronged, but Mingxi was angry. Fengwu didn't dare to open her mouth to argue. She could only hold his finger pitifully. Seeing her so aggrieved, Mingxi couldn't get angry anymore. Don't do that again, okay? If you need to leave, you must tell me. Mingxi sighed and softened his tone. When Fengwu saw that Mingxi was no longer fierce to her, she was so happy that her eyes curved. She promised very cleverly that she would be obedient in the future. Xiaowu, where did you go just now? Do you know how worried everyone was? Don't run around like that again. Zicheng had already sent Eve to inform everyone that Fengwu had been found. Seeing that the two of them were finally done talking, she finally spoke up with a face full of worry and disapproval. Zicheng was quite surprised at how important Fengwu was in Mingxi's heart. He didn't expect that Mingxi didn't have no feelings for Fengwu. It was just that Mingxi didn't come from an ordinary family. Would his family accept a woman like Fengwu who had given birth before? Although the school's explanation was that Fengwu had mistakenly eaten the pregnancy fruit and had a child, the pregnancy fruit was a rare and precious treasure. However, the pregnant fruit was a precious spiritual fruit that was rarely seen. Moreover, it grew in very few places. How could Fengwu have eaten such a rare spiritual fruit by mistake? She didn't believe it. Fengwu still didn't know that her relationship with Ming Shi hadn't even started. But Zicheng had already labeled it as a tragedy. Fengwu didn't have much to say to Zicheng, but she couldn't ignore other people when they talked to her. Ajur had said that this was out of courtesy. But Ajur himself often ignored other people's words. Was this considered rude? Fengwu couldn't figure it out, but she still listened obediently. If someone spoke to her, as long as they didn't have any bad intentions, she would respond, even if it was just one word. So little sister Fengwu is fine. We were so worried. It's good that you're fine. Don't run around in the future. This place is very creepy. So many people in our team disappeared. We all thought that Miss Fengwu had disappeared too. It's great that you're fine now. Those who were looking for Fengwu also came back one by one. The moment they saw Fengwu, they all expressed their concern. Fengwu's answer was very brief. She kept repeating the words, I'm fine. No one said anything about her. When everyone's concern came to an end, they finally had time to ask where Fengwu had gone. In order to let everyone see Xiaoqi, Fengwu used an undead psychic potion from her space ring. When this potion was dripped on one's eyelids, they could see things that the naked eye couldn't normally see. The psychic potion was very effective. They could already see the effect as soon as it was dripped. A creature that was neither male nor female suddenly appeared in front of them. That wasn't all. Next to Fengwu was a black mass of translucent souls. These people were wearing ancient battle robes and armors, or noble costumes. At first glance, they knew that they weren't normal humans. Everyone was so scared that they almost couldn't speak clearly. It was impossible for anyone to not be scared when they suddenly saw such a group of undead. When Fengwu made this decision, Baobao and the spirit of the emperor agreed after thinking for a few minutes. The spirit of the emperor couldn't hide it all the time. Sometimes it was inconvenient for them to communicate with Fengwu, and they had to explain for a long time. It was good that everyone could see it, so there was no need to explain anything. Ming Shi looked at Fengwu with some understanding. He had already noticed that Fengwu was in a daze from time to time, and talked to herself. He already had some guesses in his heart. Now that he saw a large group of souls suddenly appear, although he was a little surprised, he wasn't scared. Fengwu told Ming Shi and the others about the spirit of the emperor and Xiaoqi. Everyone was surprised, and at the same time, they found it hard to believe. They didn't expect that so many souls had been following them. Thinking that there had been souls around them all the time, everyone felt strange. When the spirit of the emperor came out, those who didn't know the truth about the tomb of the sea god also knew. Everyone expressed their disgust for the cruel god of the sea god. And Xiaoqi's experience made everyone agree to help Xiaoqi eliminate the czar. The czar was different from the spirit of the emperor and the other undead. He was half demon and half human, and he was cruel by nature. He wasn't a good person when he was alive. Wait, there's one thing I don't understand. Isn't the czar dead? Why do you want us to help you kill the czar? Fengli asked, puzzled. The czar had been dead for 10,000 years, but hearing those words from Xiaoqi's mouth, it was as if he wasn't dead at all. This made her somewhat puzzled. Of course, Fengli wasn't the only one who had this question. Everyone was very confused about this. The czar was dead, and according to what happened to the spirit of the emperor, the tsar's soul should be imprisoned, creating endless evil spirits to protect the tomb of the sea god. Chapter 411. Of course, Fengli was not the only one who had this question. Everyone else was very confused. The czar had been dead for many years, and based on what happened to the spirit of the emperor, the tsar's soul should have been imprisoned to create an endless amount of murderous aura to protect the sea god's tomb. Since the czar had already received the punishment he deserved, why did Xiaoqi still want them to kill the czar? No matter how they thought about it, It was a very strange thing. Our king has always been alive, living in the desert city, Xiaoqi said with a pale face. You said the Tsar has always been alive? That's impossible. Caesar frowned and shook his head. Yes, everyone knows that the Tsar is dead. Without becoming a god, he can't live for tens of thousands of years. As long as a human did not become a god, their lifespan would eventually come to an end. It was impossible for them to live for tens of thousands of years. Zicheng, the transmigrated female protagonist, still had this bit of common sense. Our king has always been alive, living in the moon. Xiaoqi bit her lip. Although it was a little frightening for her to do this with a face that was neither male nor female, it was a little strange. The moon. Could it be? Mingxi was shocked and suddenly had a guess. The moon you're talking about is... Eve was about to ask more, but Xiaoqi's expression suddenly changed. It's too late, I have to leave here. If I stay any longer, they'll definitely find out. Xiaoqi said hurriedly and disappeared in a puff of smoke. Everyone called Xiaoqi's name a few times, but no one responded. It seemed that Xiaoqi had really left. What do we do now? Mei Irene asked uneasily. We've been here for a long time. Will we really become the same as Xiaoqi and the others? Eileen touched her face, her fair little face full of panic. What was a woman most afraid of? Losing her beautiful face. Eileen was a beauty who was popular among men. If she had to live with a man's face, she would rather die. It should be true. You'll understand when you look outside. Zicheng pointed outside the hall. Elena turned around to take a look. She almost screamed out loud. Outside the palace, a large group of identical spirits stood outside the palace. Being stared at by so many identical faces at the same time was not a good feeling. Elena and Mei Irene screamed at the top of their lungs. Their screams almost tore the roof off. Even Eve was so scared that she hid behind Zicheng, her body trembling. These are the people from the Sand Country. Zicheng swallowed her saliva. This was also the first time she had seen so many people who looked exactly the same. She felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. Not only did these people have the same appearance, even their auras, movements, and expressions were exactly the same. It wasn't scary if one person was like this, but if a group of people were like this, then it was very scary. It must be them. These people are also pitiful. They were tortured by the Sand Emperor, just because these people did not save him when he was young. Such methods are indeed cruel. Compared to the Sand Emperor, I suddenly feel that I'm not a bad person. The 7 non-mainstream people who had joined halfway clicked their tongues in wonder. What are you talking about? Fengli rolled her eyes at them. Looks like we have to go to the moon to take a look, Mingxi suddenly said. The moon? Could it be the crimson moon outside? Zicheng guessed. Mingxi nodded calmly, not saying anything. Zicheng did not expect Mingxi to like her too much. After the incident at Bewitching Wind Island, she already knew that she would gradually drift apart from Mingxi and the others from now on. It was impossible for Zicheng not to feel that it was a pity that she missed out on these people's favorability, but she had no way to change her image in Mingxi's eyes. Forget it, let's just take one step at a time. As long as he was willing to talk to her, she might have a chance to establish a new friendship with Mingxi and the others. I guessed it was there too. Other than that place, there can't be any other place with a moon. Sherrod looked in the direction of the palace and said with a serious expression, Let's go and meet the Sand Emperor on the moon. Caesar clenched the staff in his hand and said without hesitation. Everyone, including the middle-aged man, agreed to go to the moon to find trouble with the Sand Emperor. They couldn't find a way out, and it was very likely that the exit was with the Sand Emperor. When they eliminated the Sand Emperor, the exit might appear naturally. If they wanted to enter the Crimson Moon, they had to leave this place and go out of the ancient desert city. The Crimson Moon would only appear above the pile of bones. They could only reach the moon if they went out of the city. The quiet street was still silent, but when everyone walked the same path this time, the feeling was different because everyone saw the truth. Faces that looked exactly the same were staring at them with cold and emotionless eyes. Their eyes flashed with an unknown light. They did not pounce on them, nor did they stop them from leaving. What did those undead want to do? Although they were puzzled, no one could give them an answer. Those who thought that there would be a tough battle breathed a sigh of relief. The number of undead was really a bit too large, much larger than the group following Fengwu. Among them, only Fengwu had some research on undead, and there wasn't even a proper necromancer. No matter how one looked at it, the success rate of communicating with these spirits was far too low. According to Xiaoqi, once their appearances completely changed, not only would their appearances change, but even their personalities would change as well. Who knew what a group of spirits with twisted personalities would do? While thinking about it, everyone finally succeeded in walking out of the ancient desert city. When they walked out of the city gate, they saw a pile of bones. There was no scene of skeletons standing up and wielding swords. If they weren't sure that it was impossible for everyone to see, no one would believe that all this was real, and that these skeleton soldiers could come back to life. Everyone walked out of the city and passed through the pile of bones. They wanted to go directly into the Crimson Moon, but the Crimson Moon was gone. They didn't see anything at all. How could this be? Where's the moon? Why is the moon gone? Irene May had been frightened more than she had ever been since she was a child. Her spirit was already a little out of control. The disappearance of the moon was the worst news for her. Where's the moon? Where did the moon go? What should we do? What should we do now? Eileen said, a little out of her wits. In the end, what Eileen was most afraid of was going back and waiting, slowly becoming the same as those people inside. Don't panic, I think the moon is not gone. It only appears at a specific time. Don't worry, everyone. Zicheng gently comforted the girls. We can only wait for the red light to appear again. Probably only when the red light appears can we enter the Crimson Moon. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.